you. I never use it, but my laptop died.
Ready to go? Okay, folks, welcome to the beginning of the closed session of October 8th, regular Police Protection and Community Services District Board meeting. This time I will take roll call. Director Sheriff Watts. Here. Director Toon.
Here.
Director Cordova.
Here.
And I will note that Director Gillette is not here tonight, although she will be participating by phone in the closed session after we break for closed session after comments. Would anybody from the public like to comment before we go into closed session? Okay, that's fine. That's quite all right. In that case, we will adjourn from here to closed session and begin our discussion.
You don't hear it as loud as it is in the back.
Okay.
Because of that other speaker. You do hear it.
Well, I would like you, when you're not hearing, please, raise your hand, okay? Okay, everybody, let's sit down and get started, please. Welcome to the regular session of the October 8th Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District Board meeting. My name is Len Welsh. I'm the president, and at this time I'll take roll call. Director Sheriff Watt. Here. Director Toombs. Here. Director Cordova.
Here.
Director Gillette, Pat Gillette, was not able to attend tonight because of some family events that are very important to her. She did leave some statements to be read, which we will read later on at the appropriate time. First of all, I have to report out on a closed session that we began at 6 o'clock tonight. We were briefed by our lawyer on a legal memorandum that he wrote, and we took no action. That's it with the closed session. Now for the open session, what I would like to do before we proceed with public comments is a little swearing-in ceremony.
Yes, sir.
We have a new member we're adding to the police force, and we'd like to swear him in. Chief General Manager Hart, can you please brief the board and lead us in the ceremony?
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to introduce which will be our newest officer here for the Kensington Police Department. Come a little bit closer for me so everyone can know that you're here. This is Reserve Officer right now, Christopher Armanino. I'd like to provide a little bit of background about him before I get started here, but prior to his pursuit of career in law enforcement, Officer Armanino earned an Associate Arts degree in Liberal Arts from Canada College. He continued his educational pursuits by earning his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Sonoma State University. He completed his basic academy at the College of San Mateo in February of 2009, and then joined the Kensington Police Department as a volunteer reserve officer in November 2010. As a reserve officer for nearly 5 years, he has demonstrated that he's an extremely hardworking individual and dedicated to serving the residents of Kensington. Through his hundreds of hours of service, and I did not have a chance to add up all of them at this point in time though, but through his 100 hours of service over the 5-year period, he has earned the respect of his new peers. The members of the KPD were unanimous in recommending that I hire him. I'd like to thank Officer Armanino for his hard work and dedication that got him here, and also provide a little encouragement for all of the hard work that he has yet to come for the community of Kensington. So it's my pleasure to swear him in, and we'll move over to the flag if I have the indulgence of the board.
Please come on over.
Okay, raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Chris Armanino,
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Do you swear by this for the rest of your career? Congratulations. So what I would like to do now is bring up Officer Armanino's parents, I believe, for pinning of his badge. And as obviously everyone knows, police officers wear a badge. This is a badge of faith, and it is something that I hold very deeply, and that we, as law enforcement officers, wear on our chest. As everyone knows, many police officers have died by wearing this badge, just solely for the purposes of wearing this badge. But it is strictly also, more importantly, a symbol of faith and trust that the community has in this officer. So I know he will wear it proudly, and I think it's his pleasure to have his mother pin it on his chest. Why don't you step to the podium for me and introduce your family and say a few words, and we'll go from there.
So this is my mother, Janice Armanino. Again, the green shirt buttoned down. It's my dad, Stephen Armanino. It's my roommate, Jared, and his girlfriend, Cassidy. Thank you guys for coming. Like Chief Hart said, I've served this community for a little over 5 years. Getting the opportunity here to work as a full-time police officer is a dream come true. I'm looking forward to being here on a full-time basis and getting to know the community more and serving the people that are here. Thank you.
All right. I need you to come over here and sign this form, which is the legal document that's going to make you a police officer here in beautiful downtown Kensington. And board, thank you very much for the opportunity. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Yes, welcome aboard. We're so glad to have you.
So the tentative plan for Mr. Armanino is he obviously has to give notice to his employer, and his employer is fairly lenient, so we'll be able to start work for a modified field training program, which will last probably about 5 weeks. Most field training programs are about 12 weeks, but because he's already really passed one as a reserve officer, I'm just putting him through a 5-week orientation as a full-time officer, because there's a few more things you got to learn as a full-time officer, and so he'll be on the streets probably by himself, roaming the streets of Kensington probably by the end of November. So one more time, I appreciate it, and I appreciate his family for being here. Thank you very much.
There really is no higher calling than being a police officer. It's a dangerous and essential job. It's underappreciated, and I, for one, really do appreciate the force we have, and I appreciate the fact that you're joining us, Mr. Armanino, Officer Armanino. All right, we now move to the portion where we take comments from members of the public on any subject not on the agenda for tonight.
Good evening, board members. It's Dave Spath. Can you hear me? My name's Dave Spath, and I'm here in my capacity as the temporary chair of the Ad Hoc Governance Committee, which you formed most recently to look at a number of issues associated with police services within Kensington. A little bit of what we've done to date. We've held a meeting on October 1st, our first meeting to get together and start working on things. We've set a continuing meeting schedule of the first Thursday of every month, and we're planning to hold a special meeting on October 20th of this month. That's still tentative, but it looks like it will happen at that date. We have a 10th member who will be appointed this evening, as I understand it. And we have 2 members who are not able to meet at the last meeting, and we want to make sure that they can attend as well. Overall, I think the first meeting went well, with one major exception. And that is, there appears to be a difference of opinion as to what the intent of the framework is. There are certain members of the committee who interpret the framework as to be a set of guidelines, or a guidance document, if you will, that can be viewed broadly, giving the committee significant opportunity to delve into certain tasks, possibly the tasks that are listed in the framework, and possibly other tasks as well, and other deliverables, setting a set of their own time frames for completion of those tasks, and a final report, of course. There are other members of the committee who look upon the framework as a set of required tasks that have to meet a certain time frame, with a final report also within a certain time frame. So we have this dilemma of clarity, if you will. And I think part of the reason for that is that the framework is not, there is no final document that is available to both the public and the committee that shows the one change that was made with the framework. That is to say, recommendation was taken out, so we're no longer required to make recommendations. It's just finding of fact. But having said that, on the board website, the only thing you find is the proposed framework. And at the meeting, the proposed framework was passed out to all the committee members. So I think overall, there is a misunderstanding, if you will, as to the status of the framework. Because I believe most of the committee members actually were not at the July meeting where you adopted the framework and made those minor changes. So what I'm asking the board, if you will consider it, is to hold a special meeting prior to our October 20th meeting to just give clarity and direction to the committee as to what the framework means. What is the intent of the framework? Is it a set of defined tasks that we will do, because the language of the framework is will, or is it to be viewed as more of a broad guidance document with a lot of flexibility with regard to deliverables, deadlines, etc. So I would like you to consider that. I note you have an item on the agenda, I believe it's G, but as I read that agenda item, it does not appear to be broad enough to address the specific issue that I am bringing to you. You may want to consider actually, if you are willing to hold a special meeting before the 20th, you may want to consider deferring that particular item until that special meeting as well, but that's your choice. So anyways, I would like to urge you to hold a special meeting to give us clarity so that we can, on the 20th, really start getting into the meat of the issue and go forward. Thank you.
Before you go, this actually was not agendized to talk about holding a special meeting. Would it be appropriate, Randy, if we were to have a discussion now about setting a possible date for a special meeting?
So it would be, I'm not sure if we want to do it during public comment, but at this meeting, it would be okay. There's this provision in the Brown Act that says a majority of the board of the legislative body may at any time call a special meeting. It's essentially a housekeeping matter. And so if you wanted to do that tonight, you could do that. You could also do it at another time.
Could I just get a sense of the board? The 20th is what day of the week?
I won't be present, so I won't be present until the next board meeting.
You'll be out of the area?
I'll be out of town. And I would very much like to participate. And my feeling is that that document, I think we sliced and diced it. It was adjudicated with that one minor modification and passed by this board, and I don't feel the need to revisit it to the point where there will be material changes to it. That's my position on it. I thought there was enough flexibility within the document, but I'm biased, obviously, since I wrote it.
Well, can I clarify one thing? Did you feel, Mr. Spath, that what was in the document was clear enough for you, except for the fact that it was listed as proposed on the website, or do you think
Yes,
the document itself needs to be altered?
Right. I don't think any of the committee members was suggesting that it be modified in any way. At least that's the impression I got. I think it was more an issue of clarity. Is the intent that we follow these tasks and complete them as defined, as at least I have my own view, which is that they are defined within the framework, and that's the way the committee should move forward. But as I said, there are other members who feel that it is more of a guidance document. And I think maybe that's, as I said, because it still is viewed as being proposed. So we wouldn't be suggesting that any changes be made. Certainly I wouldn't, by any means. I'm quite comfortable that it is what it is.
Was the question clarity of wording or of the clarity of the timeline or flexibility in the timeline?
I think it was clarity of intent. What is the intent of the framework?
You mean in terms of instruction or just suggestion?
I've been involved in writing regulations in my past profession, working on draft legislation, etc. When something says will, it means that you should do it, and you have to do it. As I read the framework, it says you will do these tasks within these deadlines. However, because of the lack of clarity and the fact that it's still viewed by some as being this proposed document, some feel that it is much more flexible in its ability, in its intention, and therefore its implementation.
Well, my feeling is that will means will, and that if we said you will do it, it means you will do it. Now, the two authors of the document maybe want to comment on that.
The board adopted, I'm sorry.
No, check, I already...
I'm not sure we should get
We're
too
getting
far
to
down
the
the
weeds
road
here.
to the substance of what the special meeting might be about.
Actually, I'm trying to avoid the special meeting. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if we can clarify right now
But
this one
I don't think we
issue.
can do that. It's not on the agenda.
That's what my
that's the
concern
point.
is.
But I would encourage
I
folks to
apologize.
review that video, because we were clear about the 4 areas of study. That was quite clear. And at Director Gillette's friendly amendment, it is not to present recommendations, it was to present findings.
That's correct.
And that was what we agreed to unanimously, and perhaps we can review that video of that deliberation. I would point folks to that.
It sounds like we're not going to be able to hold a special meeting before you meet next. But I'm sensing from what Vanessa said that the document means what it says, and maybe that will help. When will you be back in town, Vanessa, for a
Next
meeting?
board meeting, that
Next board
Thursday,
meeting.
I'm flying in.
Well, one thing that might be useful, and I did talk to General Manager Hart about this, and that is finalizing the document, getting it up on the website. And just for everybody's information, we have created our own website as well, the committee website, where the audio portion of the meeting exists already. And I would take that final document and put it up there as well. Now, I don't know if there's anything more you could say as to what you have already said, and I agree with what you've already said, by the way. But maybe that would be helpful, and maybe I can go to the meeting on the 20th and say, this is the final document. Here it is. It's no longer proposed. It says what it says. We will do these things in this fashion, within these deadlines, and we can go forward.
Well, let me...
Mr. President? So two things. I have the actual motion here. I have a copy of the minutes, if you'd like me to read them, number one. And number two, I also have a version, the final version, with the corrected amendments on here for both directors to sign, which I can post if that's at the direction of the board.
I think that'd be a great idea.
And that's primarily in discussing with Mr. Spath, that I recognize that it's an issue that we can probably rectify by having a final version. So we've corrected that and amended it as directed by the board, and all I need is signatures.
I think you're giving our lawyer a heart attack.
Sorry.
Well, let me say this, okay? Your time is valuable. You don't want to have a meeting on the 20th and waste your time. And I think the board spent a lot of time coming up with that document, and the board meant what it said. So if the committee is going to be continuing to disagree over whether the board meant what it said, I think you're going to be wasting your time.
I don't disagree with you. Could I ask counsel one question? Is it acceptable or allowable to have a board member or more board members attend that meeting, not a quorum, but less than a quorum, and state the intent of the framework?
That's a question for you, Randy.
Yeah, there's nothing that prohibits that, if they're so moved to do that.
Okay. Then I may invite.
However, I do want to note that one board member speaking does not speak for the board. That's
That's right. I mean, the document says what it says. If you want to take into consideration the views of others, including board members, about what it means, then I guess you can consider that. But
well, let me just say that it would add significant weight to the argument that the final document, it has a set of prescribed tasks that will be done within a certain time frame. And I would certainly both encourage and invite at least 2 members of the board to attend, and at least make a statement if you so.
One more question, Randy. If board members attend and make statements, they are, and there's less than, like there's 2 or fewer, can they opine as board members, or they have to do it as citizens?
well, I guess the only thing I would caution is that they should not, I mean, unless they should not be suggesting that they're speaking on behalf of the board. I mean, I don't know if, they can identify themselves as a board member and they're there to speak as the item. That's entirely accurate. But they should not suggest or represent that they're there speaking on behalf of the board unless they've been authorized to do so by the board.
And there's nothing really to stop all 5 board members from attending as members of the public, is there?
There is not. You're going to have an issue if you have
multiple speakers.
Multiple speakers,
Right.
Because at that point you're essentially deliberating on discussing an item that's within your jurisdiction, and you didn't notice it as a meeting.
So the quickest 2 people to speak get to do the speaking, and the rest have to be quiet, huh?
Or just either that, or maybe you draw straws, or come up with some way to do it.
Early states.
Well, I'm going to say again, there's nothing, in the process we followed to suggest that is a proposed anything. It's what we decided, and please do post what the
Yes,
final
and again,
documents
if you
are.
could also post the link to that meeting, I think we're on the record as stating if there's a profound concern that requires a material change in that document, they could come back.
Right.
Which is why I asked Mr.
Right.
Spath.
That's fine.
Dr. Spath, I'm sorry.
No, it's-
So,
David is fine for that matter.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
All right, so does
Well,
that...
no, I think this at least is encouraging to me, because now we'll have a final document, and I can go to the committee and both point to that and point to the fact that you had adopted it in your July meeting with the minutes, and that may be sufficient to win.
All right, and we can certainly take it up at the regular November meeting if there's still a problem. Okay?
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Ryan Anderson. This is a follow-up to that conversation. The document in question is a guidance document intended to guide the ad hoc committee, and it appears there's some confusion and questions around there. So I would suggest that the guidance document is insufficient. If it's leading to confusion and a lack of clarity in terms of the mandate of what the committee is meant to do, I think it may be worth considering revising the document so it speaks with a very clear voice. The other 2 are questions that I heard tonight, and I would just like to repeat them concisely. I don't know if you can answer them tonight or in some of the follow-up. The first question, which we just heard, was, is the intent to prescribe or guide? A prescriptive document or a guidance document? So I think it's simply an answer is this something that's prescribing a course of action or guiding a course of action? And I think if we can just answer, I don't know if you can answer that now.
And I'm really concerned about the board weighing in on these issues. I mean,
Okay.
nobody's on notice that this is going to be
and I
discussed
understand.
tonight.
So I would, if there are future conversations, I would ask that people in attendance would just simply ask that question. Is this document asking, is it prescribing or is it guiding? Because that's a question that was asked earlier. And if the people on the committee are asking it, I think it's important to have clarity. And the second one, I'll echo back, was is it asking for findings or is it asking for a recommendation? And that's quite simple. Are you requesting findings?
That is stated. That is already addressed.
And the answer to that is
Findings.
findings, not recommendation. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Well, Director Toombs and Director Cordova jointly collaborated on the document, if I understand correctly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Over there, attracting all the wildlife.
Gloria Morrison, District Citizen. And what I'm asking is that item C on the consent calendar be pulled. I noticed that you say address the board on any issue on the consent calendar. So that is my particular interest. My other comment is I can't believe it. You know, once the board passes something, that's what they passed. And, you know, if the community as a whole wishes to write a document, go right ahead. But, you know, this sort of, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No. It's what your motion said. PTA lives. Anyway. So
Item C. Okay, thank you.
We got that. Peter?
Good evening, everyone. On a different topic, my name is Peter Liddell. I'm with the Kensington Public Safety Council. This is just a brief announcement. A week from tonight, on Thursday, October 15th, the Kensington Public Safety Council will be presenting Larry Guillot, I think that's the correct pronunciation, who will discuss seismic retrofitting. Things have changed enormously over the years, and simply bolting your foundation down is probably no longer enough. So Larry will be talking about updates, improvements to seismic retrofitting, and he'll be taking questions and providing answers as best he can.
Peter, what time will that be?
This will be at 7 p.m.
Here?
Yes, in this
Thank
very
you.
room. So we hope to see you on there. I'm sorry? Correct. Question? Good, thank you.
And I believe
Thank
we're
you.
going to put that on the website.
The notice
I
is
think
on
we're
the
posting it on
bulletin
the
board
website.
outside.
And there's posted up here on the door,
Outside.
I think,
Outside.
on the back.
Yeah, I'll tell it when
Celia Conkus. You have a very full schedule, so I'll be very, very brief.
Can you
This
just
is-
speak a little bit louder? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Get close to the mic.
Celia Conkus, and you have a long agenda here, and so I will be very brief. This is just past information that I'm looking for. Somebody ought to SWAT that. Don't necessarily need to have that recorded.
I will if it comes close to me.
Good. There was an exchange in July and then in August, and it had to do with questions about a vehicle that was hired, rented, a rental vehicle by one of the officers, and we were told that we would hear within a week or two some report from you. And to the best of my knowledge, this is October and I have not yet heard anything. If somebody knows that there has been a report, please do let me know where I can find it. The other thing is that...
Could I stop you there? This is the rental car issue, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't you report on that once already?
I don't believe I reported out here. There was a question that came out through Nextdoor, which I tried to state facts through Nextdoor. And I believe it was resolved. At least I thought it was, because I haven't heard anything since we posted the information on it. But I can certainly do something more if you'd like.
I mean, to the best of my knowledge, there were questions that were asked as to why the officer, and not the district, hired the vehicle? Where was the vehicle at the time it was damaged? Was the vehicle repaired? And if so, how do we know about it? And the question of why would a police officer hire a vehicle when we have so many in the fleet?
Yeah,
So
and
those
I believe we've answered all those questions, but we'll certainly...
Good. Yeah, I just would like to know when we will hear that, because it's a nagging question that keeps coming up.
Maybe for the next meeting, you could just prepare a little memorandum going through
Sure.
the little history
It would be
there.
very nice.
I can do that.
Good. And the other, something that's hanging in there had to do with your announcing that there would be an independent audit of the officers who went to Reno. And to the best of my knowledge, we haven't heard who is doing that independent audit. Was it done? You said that it would not change the discipline, but at least we ought to know whether some independent agency looked at it.
Yes, and I will tell you that I'm prepared to brief the board in November, at the November meeting, and then we can go from there based on the
Will
board's
that be
direction.
in closed session then? Or is that an unfair question to ask you?
So I'm currently reviewing those types of issues to see what can be public and what cannot be, and I've not reached a conclusion about that, but we will by the November meeting.
Good.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? I know we had one request to pull item C on the consent calendar. Are there any?
Mr. President, before we move on, if
Oh,
there
I'm
are
sorry.
no other...
Staff?
If there are no other members of the public, I've been asked by Director Pat Gillette to read a statement, if the board's...
Before you go there, I notice you have a new format, but it doesn't say anything about board comments.
Director's comments.
Director
We've-
comments, thank you.
I just wanted to make sure we got, it seems we combined public comments with consent calendar in this, so why don't we just get that out of the way? What items do you want to pull? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So, K and C, any other items from the consent calendar? Oh.
I think B,
Yeah.
yes, it's item B.
Item B, C, and F for me.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Items B, C, and F. But we are going to have board member comment?
Yes, we are. I just wanted to, since the way this was written, he's asking if we're going to have board member comments. The question is yes, and we can do that right now. So I just wanted to get the consent calendar thing out of the way since we got partly into it. So, who would like to go first?
So, Director, do you want me to read Pat Gillette's first?
Yeah,
under
okay,
public
go ahead,
comment?
read her comment first.
All right, so under public comment, Pat Gillette has asked me to read this statement. That is that she wants to apologize for not being at the meeting tonight, and I'll read this as she wrote it. My niece is getting married this Saturday, and my family planned a large event for tonight in Southern California. Although I take my responsibility to our community seriously, I'm also very close to my family and could not justify missing this family event. When I became aware of this conflict in August, I asked to have the meeting moved and offered several alternatives dates. Unfortunately, one of the directors was not able to accommodate the request date change. I will we'll be back at the November meeting. And that was asked by Pat Gillette for me to read that into the record. Thank you, directors.
Thank you. Anybody else? Chuck, you seem like chomping at the bit here. Let's go.
No, I just read this and I realized there was nothing about board member comments and staff member comments. That's all. And they just seem to have not been put in there by mistake.
And I did change the format a little bit to try to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And in my haste, probably, I did not include our comments.
We left
I
it
guess.
out.
Well, I did have a couple of comments, if I can use
Yeah,
this
let's do it.
time now.
Let's go. We've got our first one, Pat. So now it's
First
your
off,
turn.
I want to plug the Chiefs Citizens Academy, and I think anybody on the board and anybody in the community who's interested in how our police officers do their jobs should really attend. I did attend this 2 years ago for the whole 3-month session, and I think it's time well spent, particularly for those of us whose task it is to supervise the officers. 3 quick questions. We were expecting a GASB 68 report and a possible PERS analysis and an OPEB actuary. Do we have any idea when those 3 might be coming in?
GASB 68 has been received. We forwarded it on to the auditor so that he can include it in the audit that will be coming soon for the June 30th, 2015 fiscal year end. The actuarial, we finally were able to discern all of the medical premium expenses by retiree. I forwarded that information on to Total Compensation Systems earlier this week.
Okay.
They received the quarterly information from the district's CPA, Deborah Russell, some time ago. As far as I know, they should now have everything they need.
Okay. And the PERS analysis hasn't come in yet? Every year PERS gives us an update and a projection. We had the October from last year, but this October we don't have yet. Okay. Two more things and I'll stop. I was walking with my wife on Sunday morning. We walked by this horrible snag over here. A big tree fell over and it got cut, but the tree is still propped up by another tree it fell on. And there's some nasty looking yeah, it was about 3 feet wide. Maybe some
Coventry parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right. By the handicap bulb over there. There's a picnic table and there's a big tree that it fell over and somebody cut the rest of it off. So you have this base, but there's a whole tree that is just lying on its side, resting against another one.
I'm sorry, so confirm the location?
Right by the handicap parking, go due west about 20 feet.
Oh.
Isn't that the one?
I was talking about a branch on the Arlington that I saw around the Coventry parking lot this morning that looked like it was in a precarious...
That may have fallen too.
Okay.
But the point is, it's this big, big tree, and someone clearly cut it down, or at least it fell and someone cut the rest of it down. So you might want to take a look at that and have the person look at that. It was just kind of nasty looking, and I was afraid the rest of it was going to fall off and really do damage to somebody. And finally, I guess I can say this, I wanted to congratulate Master Sergeant Hull for collaring a bad guy up in someone's backyard. For those of you who don't know, there was a perpetrator of a crime was captured on Lake Drive, and it was a rather heinous crime. And good policing and a good alert community resident alerted the police about it, and Master Sergeant Hall was able to arrest the person, and he's currently in jail for bad things.
The homicide. And in my general manager report, which I was going to give, but it's not listed in the agenda, I will have an update for that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Dovetailing to what Director Toombs just offered in the way of the arrest, I'm not a police officer, so I should not be encouraging this, but perhaps you could encourage residents anytime they feel that something is not right to pick up the phone and call 911. And it was because of that phone call from a resident who noticed something was not right that this arrest happened. And I know sometimes we feel like we might be bothering the police, or what if we're wrong, we'll be embarrassed, and maybe you could speak to that.
I think you did it very nicely there, Director. I mean, obviously, I have had some people in the district since I've been here that dial the 7-digit number, and what I tell people is that please dial 911. If you see something that is suspicious, and in this case, specifically, the individual at 5:40 in the morning, she's opening the door to get her newspaper and sees a figure, can't tell what it is, knows it's a person, and closes the door. I don't know if she got the newspaper, but she closed the door and she dialed 911. We were there within, a matter of minutes, and, found him walking down the street on Lake Avenue, Lake Drive, I think. And it's primarily because of that. And ultimately, I believe that Fremont has just recently released, either today or late last night, that the suspect confessed to the homicide in killing his mother, and kind of explained why he did that as well. So I will tell you, and I'll go ahead, as we're speaking about that now, I'll just give the update. One of the questions that I've received and been asked a couple times in the last couple of days is, why was he in Kensington? And because he was so forthright in his interview with the police in Fremont, he was asked why he was in Kensington. He was actually looking for a lady friend that he had met, and she lived on Lake Drive in Berkeley. He thought he was in Berkeley. I don't know what the circumstances are, what his intentions are, one way or the other, but he did not know where he was at, did not realize that he was in Kensington, thought he was in Berkeley, and he just wanted to try to, hook up, for lack of better words, with this woman that he had met. So I think that's a good thing, but I will say, and I'll echo the the point is that everybody needs to lock the doors. And I mean, I know that, I know that everyone wants to say this is Kensington, but I'm always going to tell you to lock your doors. I'm always going to tell you to lock your car doors. I'm always going to tell you to dial 911 if there's any hesitation or any concern, or if you hear anything. We are obviously here for a reason, and I'm going to want you to call us anytime you think there's something suspicious. And if you don't think that it's worth it, let us make that decision. Let us make that decision. In this case, this resident, it was just a little too eerie for him to be on her porch, and as you know, all far better than I do, the front door was to the back of the property, so it was a little odd. And I just thank everyone that that nothing happened, but then she closed the door, locked the door, and called 911, and we were up there pretty quick. And I will tell you a little funny story. There's a little bit of suspicious appearance of this guy, and Sergeant Huey just said this was kind of odd, so he actually, for his safety as well as the suspect's safety, he put him in handcuffs and put him back in the patrol car. Then he called it in and asked for a warrant check, and he tells the story that the dispatcher came back and said, are you okay? Because she read the fact that he's wanted for murder. Well, what she didn't know is he was already handcuffed in the back of the car, in the back of the patrol car, but she was, asking for, any available units to assist coming up to cover our Sergeant Hull. I said Huey.
Huey, yeah, Sergeant Hull, yeah.
Sergeant Hull. And the good thing was that he was already in the back of the patrol car before he even found out what he had. But it was suspicious enough, and the law allows us to do this. It was suspicious enough where he put him in handcuffs first to detain him, and then identified who he was. He didn't have a driver's license or identification card. He had a passport. And looking at his passport, he's a well-traveled individual. And he's also traveled to some very scary places in this world. Some that are probably on the no zone for Americans. So that kind of concluded that kind of. I apologize. Kind of went into a little bit of my report that I was going to, but I was going to talk about.
I didn't mean to.
No. Quite all right.
Leak this.
Well, that's a 7-digit number, and both will get you there, but the 911 is a quicker, faster, easy thing to remember, and it goes directly to dispatch. The technology is there, and you would think I would say yes, but I can't say that right now. In some places, it does go directly to the dispatch center locally based on your GPS. But as you know, GPS around here for Kensington is a little bit, weird. They think you're in Berkeley. Typically, what happens if it would go directly to a CHP office in Vallejo. All right, and once they find out where you're calling from, they transfer it to the jurisdiction. In our case, it's Richmond. Richmond does our dispatching on a contract basis. But we find out the telephone and it doesn't hit our own dispatch. Correct, and that goes directly into Richmond. And a lot of it may be based on the cell tower that you're at. It is something that costs the phone companies millions of dollars, and they're trying to integrate into that way, where it's based directly on your GPS, and they're not 100% there yet, based on the periodicals that I've read. They're trying. So.
One last thing. The chief mentioned that he had written an article on in the capacity to next to qualify. I was just saying, if you wrote this article as chief, couldn't it be included with the agenda so that people who only hear snippets of thoughts about that will know what you have to say about it?
So the staff report that I'll put out will be inclusive of the information that we pushed out into next door. The only reason that we pushed that out is because there was absolute wrong information that was put out, and I just wanted to make sure that I'd stated facts. And then doing that added more questions on next door, and it's not my intent to go back and forth on next door, it's just to push out information. I'll clarify it in a staff report to the community.
And I feel that way about any article that you write as a reporter.
Absolutely. Sure. if you like. You're right.
Oh, yes, can I continue my comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just was wondering, he's done, yes, you're not done, go ahead.
I was the setup, and you had the slam dunk. Okay. I had the pleasure, a week before last, of attending the California Special District Association Conference in Monterey with Director Sheris Watt, General Manager Hart, and General Counsel Mr. Riddle, as well as some members of the Fire District Board. It was actually a very interesting lineup of small seminars and workshops, and we've discussed having a presentation of what we learned, and we're just trying to find the most appropriate forum, but I'm sure you'll be hearing from the General Manager in November about our trip, and so you paid for it, you have the opportunity, we had the opportunity, we thank you for sending us, because we think training is essential for board members, and that's really my only comment today.
Thank you.
Okay, or do you want to go? Yes, as Director Cordova said, I also attended the CSDA conference, which, thank you, it was very informative. I brought documentation from the conference, which is available in the back, on the back table, if people want to peruse it. I put a note, if you want a copy of anything, go ahead, and if you want to put your name, I'm happy to prepare a photocopy of things I brought back.
So that's what the Post-it notes are for?
That's what the Post-it notes are for.
Somebody was asking me what the Post-it notes were, and I had to say I did not know.
So if you would like to read it, I just didn't want to put that on to staff. The copies of all the documentation will end up at the district office, but in case if you'd like to get your hands on it more quickly, I know. Unfortunately, there's a few items that are still being sent because speakers hadn't prepared, and those include a CalPERS update. And Chuck, I wanted to just mention that the CalPERS board meeting is not until October 19th, so they may be waiting until after that date to release new information. I also want to mention that last evening was the Park Buildings Committee meeting. We had a verbal report from Gregory Wallace, seismic engineer, who is preparing a study of the building that he's conducted. There will be, that document will be included in our next meeting's packet. I also placed some agendas from last evening, which have all our meeting dates on it from now until March of 2016. Our next meeting will be October 28th, which should include the written report from Mr. Wallace and also an ADA study by architect Gilda Puente Peters, who has done an analysis of the building. So please attend if you have the interest and the time. We'd like to hear from you. And finally, the committee's big work is that and thanks to General Manager Hart, we have a new bulletin board outside, you will see, and that actually has the flyer for the meeting next week on October 15th. So if you need more information, that bulletin board will have both information for some K groups and especially KCC. So.
Director Sheris Watt, may I ask a question? Yes. Did you happen to include the very informative white paper authored by Randy Riddle on disruptive public meetings?
Why, yes, I did.
Excellent.
And so you will see back on the back table some fine reading
on how to manage disruptive board meetings.
And it has no application to this board or the audience.
Yes, we are not the case study.
So, and if anyone wants the blue ox or blue cow or the starfish swag back there, you're free to take it. So that's all for me.
Thank you. I have no comments right now. Any more staff comments?
So I'll just have a couple. I know this is probably on the mind of everybody, and that is the audio here in this building. And I will tell you that Sergeant Huey and I are exploring every option we can. I can also tell you that I'm hoping to potentially partner with the Fly Fishermen Group and Association as well as KIC so that we can maybe increase the value if they contribute to some of the dollar amount. I know that I've personally met contractors out here. It's a very unique building in order to provide adequate audio in a temporary setting. In other words, if it was a dais, we'd have permanent stuff there that we don't. But as you know, this being the youth hut is used by a number of, I came in there the other day and there was a cooking class going on, and I came too early because the brownies weren't done yet. But so it's used by quite a bit. So we are working on that. I don't want to buy something, quite frankly, that's not going to work. And I'm going to be prudent about it, and it may take more time than what I want, but I want to make sure it's something that we get what we need, that will work, and spend our money wisely. So I hope everyone will be patient as we move forward. We've explored a lot of different alternatives, and we're just not 100% there yet. So more to follow on that. Okay. I did attend a one-day boot camp on human resources, which was good up in Sacramento a couple weeks ago. I also met with Sheriff Livingston this past month, privately to discuss items of common interest within the community. Work obviously continues to improve the website to make it easier for the community use. I did facilitate a meeting with some community members just to add from a different perspective. I have not turned it on because I haven't liked the first version that I've got, and I'm kind of picky. So it is truly an intent to make it more user-friendly and easier for purposes of the community. And then as two directors have already mentioned, and we'll provide more detail next month, but I did attend the annual California Special Districts Conference as well. Then tree pruning, way in the back here on the left-hand side. As remember, that was from a Diablo Fire Safe grant that we received. That work has been completed. If you look over here by the barbecue and the redwoods here, it has been completely trimmed, quite frankly, and in the back, up front, beyond the amphitheater, has also been significantly trimmed, so you don't have any more, I don't know, what we call them, tree limbs touching the ground, fissures, and we've also had to cut a couple trees down. We've also, for purposes of bark beetles, one of which was right in front here by the trash receptacle that was infested, and if it were to fall, of course it would fall on the handicap parking spot. So that tree unfortunately had to be removed. And then we'll be removing a tree tomorrow that's probably about 80 feet high. It's way in the back of our property, adjacent to some property homes, very close to some properties, and where if that were to fall as well, that would fall on some homes. And that tree, not only is it a Monterey pine, and Monterey pine are not doing well as a result of the drought, it's also leaning, and it has all the limbs trimmed off on one side, the side facing the school. So they didn't want the school, I assume, before my time, trimmed all those trees. So you have a tree that's in distress, you have a tree that is completely engulfed with ivy, which sucks up and hurts the tree, I'm told. I've had two different arborists come out and tell me the same thing. So unfortunately, we've got to take that tree out. The homeowner that I know that has contacted some board members is aware that it's going to happen tomorrow. They actually showed up today. I said, no, it's tomorrow. And the reason it's on a Friday is because the school principal has asked that I do it on a Friday, which minimizes their impact to the school for kids to play on the schoolyard. So that's going to be a big day for, I think, a couple homeowners next door when that tree goes down. That'll be tomorrow. Kensington Police and Fire personnel were involved in the National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. And just the police, I can't obviously speak for the fire, just for police, we took in 103.3 pounds of excess medication that's no longer needed, that was prescribed to somebody, and just need to be discarded. And probably several years ago, we discarded it in other ways. Now we do it and we put it in receptacles, and they take it to a factory where they burn it and incinerate it. And the fire department also participated, and they are the ones that can recover sharp instruments and needles and so forth, where we just take the pills.
I want to thank Fire District President Larry Nagel, because the Fire District pays for that event mostly, and I appreciate you letting us participate.
And then as of yesterday, and I think one speaker already mentioned it, and I know that we have one person that's attending the Citizen Academy now. We had 8 community residents attend the first Citizen Academy for this year. I think it was a good kickoff. They're going to learn a variety of different aspects of both law, criminal law. We've got a criminalist coming in from the crime lab that's going to be presenting. We have a district attorney that's going to be coming in and presenting about laws and how cases get charged and so forth. And I've got a surprise for them towards the end, which I won't say publicly because there's a couple that are here. And then lastly, easiest way to say this is that there's been not financial aspects, but I'm checking and auditing some of the PERS accounts, Delta Dental, so some of the medical files, and there was a error that has been found that resulted in the district overpaying and not receiving the amount of money that they should have received by an employee. And I believe it was not the employee's fault. I think it was I'm told to say it was pre-Lynn Walter, and it was based on the date that an error was made where it wasn't attributed to his paycheck, so not enough money was deducted out of his account. We have since corrected that, and that actually adds up to about $10,000 going back into the district's fund from the employee. So, and I'm doing that with all of the accounts. Anything that I can audit that has not been audited in a while. I know I've spoke before about, orders and policies from the department. They have not been reviewed in over 3 years, so we're working on things like that and try to tighten things up. I know that I've also presented about personnel files and background files, and we're just kind of cleaning up kind of the administrative stuff in the office that needs to be done. So, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Lynn, did you have anything? You know, I really would be remiss if I did not mention once again the work that has been quietly going forward just about every week, being done by the Park Grounds Committee. We had the pros take out the big trees that only pros can do, but since, it's been a year ago, last June, that the Park Grounds Committee has been getting out there just about every week and clearing out underbrush. They've filled, Katie, Peter, how many cans have we filled? Do you know? 10 dumpsters worth of underbrush, and essentially stuff that would transmit a fire if there were to be a fire in the area. So the work they have quietly been doing has done a lot to protect this building from a fire should one occur. I'm going to try to set a meeting before the end of October for the group to come together. And, it might be nice if we got together with Charlie Danielson, who's one of the big leaders of this effort, along with Katie Gluck and Peter Liddell, a little presentation on what's happened a little before and after with photos and things like that, if that's possible. It's really it's been quite an effort. It's hard work. I did a little myself until I hurt my back, and then I punked out. But that's very important work they've done. Hasn't cost a dime yet, and it should form the basis for getting a grant for doing more work.
And they were out there yesterday.
Is relevant. So I just want to say thank you to you two since you're here tonight. Thank you to Charlie Danielson, who's not here, and to the others, who've contributed mightily to the effort. Who am I missing? Gretchen and yeah. Yeah, I mean, there have been people coming in and out, and I didn't mean to neglect mentioning your name, Mabry, but there is this core. Yeah, well, you're like me. But, I mean, there's been a core that's been going there every weekend, and it's hard work, it really is. It's not fun, it's not easy. It is educational. Charlie knows quite a bit, and you get to learn a bit about vegetation management along the way, and what plants are native and what are invasive and that kind of thing. And that's kind of fun. But it's pretty backbreaking work, and it's been going on for well over a year, and they've accomplished quite a lot, and I'm quite grateful that we should all be very grateful for that work. So enough of that. It's time, I guess, to dig into the consent calendar. First item I heard that somebody wanted to pull was item B.
No, I think it was A.
Somebody want to pull A?
B and C were...
No, B, I have B, C, K, F, and K. Any others? Okay, who would like to speak to B?
That was actually... Michelle, did you want to go first?
No, you may go, please.
Okay. I was looking at the numbers here, and item B is on page 10. It starts at page 10, and it's the September 2015. I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you. It's the September 2015 unaudited profit and loss and budget performance, and there were a couple of items. Item 411 and item 413. I know we passed a resolution some time ago that said we would seek up to $25,000 of reimbursable costs from the West County School District. But when I look at those two budget items, it comes out to more than $25,000. Did I get something wrong? Well, let's look at it's item
411 and 413.
Yeah, and
I had the same point. I was confused. I knew that the board previous to my tenure had passed the crossing guard reimbursement, but I thought that was one category, and I'm confused why it's split.
Well, there were two categories,
Were there?
but it was two categories to seek reimbursement for the crossing guard, but also for police services spent on campus doing patrol work. But my point was it was a $25,000 cap, and it looked like it's budgeted for 28. And the costs are now up to about, from July through September, I guess they prepaid the amount of reimbursement, but it looks like...
they bill us monthly, but I believe that we did have one particular month that was a spike based on an investigation that was conducted on campus. And was not familiar with the 28 or $25,000 limit between the two.
So the year-to-date budget that you see in the column, not all the way to the right-hand side, is $4,725. That is a prorated amount.
Mm-hmm.
The amount that appears under annual budget of $18,900 plus the $10,830, yes, those two lines are combined. And there is I don't have it committed to memory, but there is an amount that is invoiced for the crossing guard, and that's treated almost as a pass-through. And it is for the crossing guard for 9 months of the year. Then there is a monthly amount that is, or excuse me, a quarterly amount that is billed for police services. There are additional hours charged if there are exceptional services that occur on the school property. There was a very unfortunate incident with a dog that occurred on school property. Those hours were tracked very carefully, and those hours then were invoiced to the school. The invoices are available for the directors to review at any time. I have them in my files.
I understand that, but my point is the combination of the two supposed to be 25, or is item 413 just 25 alone, and item 411 is reimbursable, whatever it is?
For some reason, the two got split. So one is for police services, the other is for the crossing guard reimbursement.
Maybe we can go back and look at what that resolution said. I don't want to, if it's 25,000 for just item 413, that's fine. I just looked at them both as reimbursable, and I thought we had a cap of 25,000.
The school district approved up to $50,000 over 3 years.
Okay.
Okay.
But my confusion is, there's nothing been charged am I misreading? No, 411, there's nothing been charged. We've got it in the budget. But
Right,
there's
for
no-
some reason, I don't handle accounts receivable.
Okay, there's nothing.
And so that probably will be something that Debbie will catch when she does adjustments.
Okay.
So the check comes in a single amount. There aren't two separate checks. And so Andrea, who handles receivables, I think maybe the best way to handle that is for me to provide a copy of the invoice to her so that when it comes in, she codes the receivable for the two separate line items.
So you're saying that the incident on the school campus is under 412?
Yes.
Is that- thank you.
It's commingled into the,
Okay.
not 412, 413.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's nothing,
411, if
there's
you
nothing been
411.
charged on 411.
But that's where it would
It should
go.
be.
Correct. It should go, some of it should
Okay.
go under 411. The crossing guard pass-through should go on 413.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
502 just has, I had a question for you about September 15th, actual and budget. The salary officers at 502 is 74,830, and the budget was 81,702. Is the difference between the two numbers because we're down an officer and we aren't paying a salary for that one officer, but we're picking it up with overtime and other costs down the road? Okay. And I probably know the answer to this, but at 835 for Park Building, we had a budget of 5,000 and it went over. Is that because at the time we did the budget, we didn't have the estimate for Mr. Wallace? 835 consulting, I assume, we have a 10,684 bill and the budget was 5,000, and the only thing I could think was we didn't have a line item yet for Mr. Wallace's work, the structural engineer who did the consulting on the building.
But that is not part,
No.
yeah, that's not,
Oh.
that's consulting in general.
Oh.
It kind of does look like it's under the heading of park recreation, but it's technically not. It's district expenses.
Okay.
Yeah, that is district expenses. That includes invoices, including those for Adam Benson.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the big ouch there.
yeah. Okay.
Mr. Wallace is out of 972, when we get his
Okay.
invoice.
For some reason, I thought Adam's work would have been under legal, but that's okay.
Yeah. Could on 835, Mr. General Manager, can you come back to us next month and break that consulting line item out so I can specifically see where it's going? Because I'm a little surprised, as Director Toombs stated, that PLG's consulting is folded into such a broad category, and consulting is just not enough for me.
Sure, absolutely.
Those were my questions on item B.
Okay, can I ask a few on
Yeah,
item B? Okay. So I'm wondering about the levy tax. Why the large discrepancy in general? Are we just,
Where's the line?
we were expecting
401.
increased revenue, and it hasn't, will there's going to be a true up at the end? Okay. And then I'm wondering about 427, community center revenue, if we found that to be atypical, or we think that we're going to be on trend to be down this year. If you look at, we had budgeted that our hope was that we would have 8,100 by now, and we're now just below 5,000.
It could just be the timing of making the deposits.
Okay, great. Alrighty. And then, I know we've talked about 521 A and R a lot. I'm wondering if we prepaid anything, because it's about 15,000 over for active and 12,000 over for retired. in payments, and I don't know if we need to ask Debbie about that, or whether or not that is, if that is also going to be on trend, if we think that the...
Michelle, could you help us out here? We're trying to...
Oh, I'm
not
sorry,
sure
I
I'm following.
apologize. I should read the numbers and not... 521A and 521R, when we looked at the difference between the July to September numbers, you know, we're a bit ahead there in what we had budgeted year to date and what we've actually paid out. So I'm just wondering if we were thinking that the fees are going to be higher this year, or whether or not, because we're at 52,600 basically for what we've paid out, and we've budgeted only 37.
Well, the year-to-date's fiscal calendar, so we're only, right?
If there are categories for which you'd like additional information, please let me know, and I can prepare detail for you for the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. I'm
This
happy
being
to,
one of them. and-
I'm happy to table that until,
And actually, to that end, on this particular item, or any, I'll express it again, how valuable a variable column is to me. So much easier to spot the variances. I said variable, I meant variance.
Variance report, and that is something that needs to be taken up at the Finance Committee.
No, I think it can be produced for directors as fiduciaries. As,
I understand, but there needed to be guidelines that was supposed to be coming
press of the button.
as a
General Manager, could you at least send it to me? That would be terrific. Thank you.
My recollection was that the board had given direction.
That's not
that
correct. I've asked for this document several times, and I was told I would have it. So I'm going to press on that because it's very helpful information.
Well, I don't think that I think we said we would take it up in the Finance Committee
It's
meeting.
actually already been produced for me once.
What's that?
It's already been produced for me once. It's already been crafted by Ms. Russell. So it already is in existence, and I have a copy, and I'm just asking for an updated version of that report.
Oh, I will get that fixed.
Thank you.
and then lastly, I think, category 596. Would it be helpful, we're not having WestNet there anymore.
Right.
Do we need to make a motion to have that removed
No.
from the, okay. I think for clarity,
Yeah.
that's everything.
We cleaned it up in, it's been for several years, but we cleaned it up in some other documents and.
Sure,
that
no,
one
I
down.
understood.
Do we have any outstanding bill for that, or are we done?
We have no bills. We have, there's still some unsettled issues that we're working through as a region, but there's no bill.
We don't owe them any more money,
We
so we
don't owe
can.
anybody money.
Okay.
Is 596 WestNet, is that the old WestNet where we would dispatch an officer, or is this the computer network system where we do pay for that because we have access online to computer materials?
No, it's the WestNet that we had an officer assigned outside of the district. And there were some fees relative to that, as well as some reimbursements for that.
And lastly, 8:30, we're below budget on legal. Woohoo! Small victories. So I know you can argue with me about that later about Adam Benson, but well.
Yeah, well, I hope it stays that way, that's all I can say.
So, you have to get excited where you can about the budget. That's all for me on item B. So,
Okay.
Sure.
Item C?
Item C.
I just wanted to note a couple.
Wait a minute, anybody on item B?
Oh. Could you, she has to. Oh, she's going to.
Yeah.
Is this plugged in? Okay, Gloria Morrison. I'm looking at the document itself being a almost fiscal year document, not quite. And I have to say, in the interest of clarity, I realize you're using the same template as you use on the monthly statements that we get. But in the interest of clarity, when I look at 5 columns, 3 of which have exactly the same number and then 2 have exactly the same number. I'm wondering, in terms of clarity, maybe variance, maybe some other things might go in there, because I don't, it just gives a person a very strange feeling. The other thing is, on the total, and this is page 3, number 17, it says net ordinary income. Well, of course, that's revenue over expense. And I think that line might be clarified. Usually you have, revenue / expense in parentheses or minus or something. It took me a while of looking at that, thinking, what is net ordinary income, that it wasn't on income, that kind of thing. But I think I do understand that. What I'm looking at this is primarily that of clarity. Again, having 3 columns the same, 2 columns the same. Surely there is a better use of the piece of paper in terms of informing the citizens of Kensington.
Gloria, did you look at page 14?
Do I?
Because page 13 has a net ordinary income, which is fine, but then you have to flip over and see that there's some bond expenses that come off the top of that. So you took that into account?
You can go on beyond that, but it isn't net.
I know, but then my point is, at the end of that, on page 14, there is a bottom line that says net income. So the net ordinary income is reduced by bond expenses we have to pay to get net income.
We have, we had the total of income, we have had the total of expense, then there is another column, another calculation, I should say, again, on page 3, number 17, and that is obviously working out income or revenue against expense. And I think it could be clarified a little bit. It sure took me a long time to come up with what it is. And then, of course, as you say, the bond money is yet another factor in this whole thing. Again, though, it comes down to, and I don't understand it, the bond money, okay, other expense, okay, you come in, and page 4, number 18, bond money total, bond issue expense, less gain from somewhere, and other expense and other income. I'm wondering which one of those, maybe none of them are calculations of this and that, but I think the whole thing could be clarified a little bit. I think Deborah Russell might have some very good ideas on that issue. Thank you.
And before the next speaker,
Yeah, how come? Yeah, right, Carl.
everybody has heard Debbie talk about QuickBooks. This is a standardized program, and it's not real flexible. We do have to beat it up a little bit to try to get certain reports out of it, but it is standard. And I know that it doesn't necessarily meet all of our desires, but it is a QuickBook program which we use, which was bought several years ago, and we updated.
Okay, I'm Carl Kruger.
One second, Carl. So are we getting ready to update it again, or?
It's a program that's updated, pretty frequently. It's a QuickBooks program that's been around for a number of years.
I have to say, though, that data, that raw data is exportable. I don't believe that's a verb, but you can export that raw data into any, formula, you want. Right. So if we need a consultant to help facilitate that so we don't continually have this tension, that would be fabulous.
Absolutely. Realizing that Debbie is a contractor that,
Sure.
is off-site and has other contractors or other contracts, so forth. So, her time is, I get her for limited times, but I'll work more with her.
Well, maybe we can have her at the next Finance Committee meeting. We can take this up and see what we can do to clarify
I'd support a contractor to just get a template everyone can read and is happy with. That's expertise, and I'm willing to support paying for that. I know I'll get in trouble for that, but I really believe.
We'll continue to work hard to try to get everyone's needs met.
Right. I know. But I think we've been sort of kicking this thing back and forth, and let's just make the goal. And I'm with Mrs. Morrison that, let's just clean this document up so it's useful to all of us. Thank you.
I have very specific questions. Number one, these are the final figures we are going to see on the audit, I assume.
Yeah, mostly,
Okay.
absolutely.
Both groups sitting on both tables, I think I need to lecture you a little bit on legal fees. You know, our revenues are less than $3 million, and we spend $250,000 for legal fees. That is really, anyway. I think you are elected to make decisions. You don't need an attorney every time you make a decision. You are hired to and get paid. You don't need an attorney every time to make a decision. We ought to cut that back. If you just need someone to talk to, call me and I don't charge. Anyway, there are some huge differences on 850 and 890 on insurance. Our budget was 57,000 and 30,000, and then the waste money coming in is just unreal. I mean, our budget was 38,000 for the waste management, and we have 118,000.
Carl, I think you've lost us here.
I reversed it?
No, I'm just trying to figure which document you're looking at.
Okay,
What
I'm
page are you
sorry.
on?
It's starting on page 15.
So you skipped ahead to item C then on our,
Okay, yes,
that's what you lost me at.
okay.
Are you on page 17 there, 890?
But that's item C in our laundry list of stuff here.
Okay.
And this is actually the July 2014 through June 2015.
Yes.
Okay.
Carl,
I skipped ahead.
I do think you transposed those numbers because
Okay.
the budget was 118,000, but they only spent 38,000.
Okay. The chief used age as an excuse a little while ago, so I guess I can do that too, huh?
Carl, you want
The next question I have is, have we considered retroactive pay that probably should have been in last year because we do retroactive pay for our officers, which is probably a low five-figure number or maybe middle five-figure number?
If you don't mind, I'd rather not talk about the police
Okay.
negotiations, Carl. That's still
Okay.
ongoing.
All right. The final thing that I have is our revenues exceeded budget by $263,000. That includes the cap money. And we still managed to spend $7,500 more than we took in. You look at those two numbers. When you figure that your revenues exceed budget by more than $250,000 and you still can come out even, that's not very good.
Carl, I'm going to call you on that. I'm trying to look at page 18.
Okay.
And the net income figure I see is a plus 12,482. And you said we were in the minus 7,500. Where's your
Yeah.
7,500 on this?
Okay, if you take your total revenues and you deduct your total expenses, the total expenses, $2,970,449. You come up with a deficit of almost $7,500, $7,400 something.
I'm still confused here because this QuickBooks is supposed to be like a gigantic Excel spreadsheet. So total income is 2.987 million. Total expenses at the end of the day is 2.977. Net ordinary income is 9531. And then you take in the other income expenses of bonds and you come into a net income of 12,482. I may have gone fast there, but I don't see the negative number if this spreadsheet's supposed to work the way it does. It comes out positive.
Comes out $7,400 plus dollars on
No. I'm just looking at the sheet here, Carl.
Okay.
Page 18. If you have that, look on page 18. It's bottom right corner says page 18. I'm sorry.
Conveniently, I don't have page 18.
Here you
Oh.
go, Mr. Kruger. You want mine?
Okay.
Bottom right corner says page 4, doesn't it?
No. If you hold it up,
Hold it up
the
so you can
numbers,
read
the
it.
chief's numbers are at the bottom right corner. 18, 19, et cetera. And then if you actually look at, don't look at the page number on the
Handwritten
report.
No, I'm looking at the page, but
The
I mean,
handwritten number.
You're in the right page.
Look on the bottom, look at your left-hand corner there.
I see an 18 on the left-hand
That's the
corner.
right
There you go.
page.
That's the right page.
Yeah, but you're saying the bottom right. The bottom right
No,
is
I'm sorry.
page 4.
He meant the dollar amount, not the page number.
Look on that page, it says
But anyway,
net-
it says net income is $12,482. That's the bottom line.
Yeah,
That's still not, it's still
it's not
way
humongous.
off, according to Carl's calculation there.
Yes.
Total income was $2,702,013.
Wait a minute now, Carl.
The total
Okay,
income,
that's page 15,
Okay, page
on the
15.
right-hand side at the bottom.
Total income of,
Right.
looking under
no,
the,
that was what we budgeted.
you're looking at the budget, which might have been negative.
The first column there is $2,987,479. That's the actual figure.
Actually got.
So there was 200,000, almost 300,000 more than we expected.
Right. And our expenses were $7,400 higher. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to piece of paper, give it to Chuck.
No, that's okay. We can talk after the meeting, but
Oh.
your point is well taken that even with a $300,000 surplus, we managed to blow through it
Right.
and only come up with a $12,000 net income, or if Carl's numbers, a $7,500 deficit for the year. So everybody
Either way, there's a problem there.
yeah,
That's
there's a
the point.
problem there, and that's
While I'm up here, I'll deal with K. The chief answered most of my questions. I had a question on the final paragraph in your general manager's report about the reimbursement. When is the reimbursement going to be done? Because it seems like it's about $1,000 per employee. You clearly wouldn't take that all back in 1 month.
I actually gave the option of the employee to do it in a certain period of time. He chose to give back his vacation, cash in his vacation, so that his salary didn't necessarily change.
So you're going to do it in a quarter or so?
I'm going to do it all at one time.
Oh, okay,
That's the employee's direction.
okay. I'm going to sit down and figure out to see if I can argue with Chuck. Thank you.
okay. I look forward to it. Thank you, Carl.
All right, so we've sort of moved over to item C. Anything else on item C?
No.
Okay, then on to F.
And I had pulled that actually, and I can't remember why I pulled it. I don't have a note written down here. Actually, I do know why I pulled it. I was looking at page 22, handwritten notes. I just wanted to let the residents know there's some pretty, large crime numbers here. That, 75 Part 1 crimes reported, 46 are still open, and the total for the year of all crimes is 145 reported and 76 open. So, I mean, there's some bad people out there. That was my comment. And on page 23, this was the August report we didn't get last time, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that answered that.
That's why I included it this month.
Thanks.
Anything more on F?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's
I
okay.
do actually have just a quick question. I'm noticing a rise in vandalism, and I'm wondering if it's a particular, I'm on page 26, that we've had 5 incidents, and if they were in a particular area, or we should be watching, or we're...
I think that's a tough one.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't have any particular specific area that I can tell you. Obviously, it's happened in a specific area, but we're working on it.
That's wonderful. I just thought, thank you.
Yeah, I would tell you that, just in general terms, I will tell you that it's not the community itself, it's people that drive through the community and see it as an opportunity, which is why I echo, lock up your car doors. And we had one yesterday, just right down the street here, locked up the door, and it was actually broken into within a matter of probably 2 minutes from the time that she got out of her car. And it's very, very frustrating, but it happens. So we've got to make sure that we're diligent about locking up our cars, being aware of our surroundings, making sure we call 911 immediately, if we see something suspicious, on the typical basis, and I try not to say this publicly, but our staffing level, on a normal basis is minimal. And I think that's why it's important that I have several hundred other eyes out there to help us facilitate the crime prevention in this community.
Okay, last item was K, I think somebody wanted pulled. Who cited K?
Carl did, and he already answered his question, I think. Is that right, Carl? Item K, the general manager's report for September. Yeah, you already answered. Say that again?
Shout it from the highest.
I'm just, I heard you, I'm sorry, I had to stop and make sure I heard.
It happens.
It happens, yes, it happens. Okay, so,
May I make a motion?
yes, do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, on to what we're calling new business. First item is having to do with a legal opinion written by our general counsel, Mr. Riddle, who's here, as to the validity of an initiative measure. Doesn't actually have a name as far as I can tell, requiring voter approval for contracting out police services. It was adopted by the Board of Directors on October 8th, 2009. Mr. Riddle wrote a memorandum which is legally privileged, and the question is, does the board want to waive the privilege only with respect to releasing that memo and make the memo public? Would anybody like to comment on that issue on the board?
I'll take the leading oar. I think it's fine to release it. I think the community has a right to know what our own lawyers say about this opinion, and you can put it out there for discussion. I do want to make it clear it's just for this one opinion and nothing else.
Right.
I'd be in favor of waiving it and providing the opinion to the community to look at.
Yeah, I am too.
I concur. I think that we discussed legal fees, Mr. Kruger, and I think this community paid for this opinion, and they have a right to have access to it. And I support releasing it this evening.
I also support releasing it. I think it's clear and concise and will answer a lot of questions.
All right. She said it's clear and concise and will answer a lot of questions. Did I get that right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Frank Lossi. I'm puzzled why this is even an issue in this circumstance. I would assume that the people of Kensington have paid for the services of counsel to the board, and I find it strange that this issue of whether or not they're permitted to share the results of this attorney that's been hired with voter money is being withheld from the people that are paying for his services.
Okay, well, just to be clear, we're talking about whether, actually, in some cases, we do need to withhold these things because we have to follow certain laws like personnel privacy and things like that.
But that's not what this is about.
Right,
This is
and if you listen to what we've all said, every single one of us has said we're in favor of releasing the report.
Yes,
so
but
we're in agreement.
I'm not sure if we're in agreement or it just happens that way. That maybe this is an instance, but I don't understand why in any such instance such material should be withheld from the.
Well, I will say this: we can't just release it without a decision by the board to do so. So that's what this is about. Are we going to hold a vote and make a decision to release the memo?
Well,
and so.
Mr. Riddle, could you explain work product and?
Well, actually, could we take the
can't
vote
do that?
first? I mean, I would like Mr. Riddle, I think we all would like Mr. Riddle to give a summary of what the memo concludes, what the reasoning is and what it concludes.
That's later on.
We'll publish it on the website so people can read it, but I think we should just vote now on whether to make it public so that he can talk about it.
Right, I was just trying to address the concern that this is work product by council and as such is privileged, and we can release privilege, but there has to be a public deliberation
And a
to do
vote,
so.
yes.
And a vote. We're agreeing, but I'm just saying, this is actually in an effort to be transparent. It's well-intended, but
And there are instances, if we're in the middle of litigation, it's imperative for us to keep our attorney-client privilege intact so that our legal strategies in particular litigation are not disclosed in public. There's no point in hiring an attorney if everything you talk to them about is going to be a matter of public record. So there are valid instances where we would insist on keeping the attorney-client privilege and work product confidential so we can keep our legal strategies intact. Here, the board, I think, is telling the community, we think you have a right to know what potential imperfections there are in this ordinance and why our attorney thinks that's imperfect. So this particular issue, you're hearing the board is willing to waive the privilege as to this document.
I think you missed Mr. Lossey's point, but I think Chuck answered it that there's litigation reasons why you would have to maintain the confidentiality.
There are lots of reasons, not just litigation reasons.
But I think you misunderstood the point he was making. He was asking why it couldn't be, and Chuck just gave a good explanation as to why there's reasons it couldn't be released. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad he did a better job than I did. So, anyway, do I have a motion to
yes,
address this issue?
I move that we release the confidential memorandum concerning the initiative measure adopted in 2009, written by Randy Riddle and Teresa Stricker, and allow Mr. Riddle to give a brief overview of the contents.
The only thing I would like to add to that is a point Chuck made, is that this is the only part of our attorney-client privilege we're waiving is this particular memo, not memos that might be written in the future. Not that we might consider that in the future, but for now, we're just releasing this memo. We're just waiving the privilege with respect to that, to the issue of releasing this memo. Got that all in?
I'll get it off.
Okay. So is there a second?
I have a friendly amendment.
Sure.
That we direct General Manager Hart to post the opinion to the website as staff direction. Do I include that in my? No, go ahead.
I
Separate.
think maybe the next item would.
Am I combining items? Okay,
So
disregard.
this is the vote to whether to release it, and then the next item is to direct staff as to what you would like to do following.
Okay, so do I have a second then? Of her motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, I don't know if we need to vote to have him post this on the website. I think that's what you're asking for, Vanessa, and
I just see all these recommendations to provide staff direction, and I'm just trying to make sure that that is captured.
Yeah. So there's another item that follows this one then, that is 7.6B, and that's, I think, with the direction for me to explain it if you'd like me to do that, or to post it.
Yes.
Come up under that one.
But she was raising another issue, and that's just getting it posted on the website, right?
I see all these.
I'm sorry. All right. Mr. Riddle, could you say that again, please, for him?
So I guess what I'm saying is, if you call item 6B, then that might be the more appropriate place to direct staff as to what to do with the opinion now that you've voted to release it.
What he's saying is if we just go to item 6B, we can take up the, it says in 6B, one of the things we need to do is provide staff direction. And I think what Mr. Riddle is suggesting is that the idea of posting this on the website would be staff direction.
Yes, and I'm looking at General Manager recommendation, which also says that, and that's what I missed. It seems to be redundant. I'm sorry. So
it's okay. I mean, so that's the issue.
So I call item 6B, Mr. President.
I'm sorry?
I'm calling item 6B.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so you want to make a motion?
That's all it requires? It doesn't require deliberation or public comment? All right. Public comment on 6B.
Okay, go ahead.
We have to call public comment?
I think we'd like our counsel to explain what his opinion's about and just give the thumbnail sketch of it so everybody understands. And then we can discuss what we want to do after that.
All right, that's a good idea.
What do you
Does that work?
think?
That's fine.
Okay.
And let me know. It's hard for me to tell, like
You
other
have to
folks,
kiss the microphone.
Do us a favor, though. You got to kiss that microphone.
whether folks can hear me or not. So let me just, as a starting point, there's a lot of, there's a number of different provisions to this measure, but let me just read to you the kind of the central provision that's at the heart of this opinion. So the measure from 2009, and this was ultimately adopted by the board as was their legal right rather than submitted to the voters ultimately under the Elections Code. So it says, no ordinance by which the district would divest itself of its police protection and law enforcement power shall be adopted by the board of directors, and no contract or other arrangement between the district and any other agency of the government or non-governmental agency pursuant to which any or all or any substantial part of the district's police protection and law enforcement functions would be performed by peace officers employed by the other agency or entity shall be executed or become effective for any purpose unless such ordinance, contract, or other arrangement has first been approved by a majority of the voters, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I just a little bit more background for those who have not followed this? There was a petition originally circulated that gathered signatures to get this on the ballot, and what he was saying in so many words is that the petition was saying we will not contract out for police services unless there's a vote. That's essentially, in lay terms, what that petition was gathering signatures on. The petition gathered the requisite number of signatures in order to qualify to get on the ballot for a vote. But instead of putting it on the ballot for a vote, the board decided to vote itself on that same proposition. And actually, there's a government code section that says the board can do that when you've gotten one of those petitions. It's up to the board whether it wants it to go to the voters or to vote itself. And the board decided to take the vote. The question that Mr. Riddle's memo is addressing and that he's going to explain is, was the subject matter of that petition, whether it was voted on by the voters or voted on by the board, was it a legal thing to do? Was it a legal restriction to place on Kensington that it not be able to contract out for police services without a vote? I just wanted to give that little bit of lay background.
Thank you. I think that you're right. That's helpful. So generally, initiative measures are presumed valid. Voters have a right under the Constitution to propose ordinances by way of the initiative process, and courts generally are going to try to uphold that right wherever possible. There are some types of measures that are beyond the power of the voters to enact by way of initiative process. One example would be that the ballot measure has to be a legislative act, not an administrative act. So, for example, you could not, by initiative petition, propose that the color of this room be changed from white to chartreuse. That's not legislative in character, that's administrative, and not something that's generally within the power of voters to do through the initiative process. Another limit on the initiative power is that the power of the voters is generally coextensive with that of the board. So if a particular type of measure is one the board could not take, then neither may the voters. And just to give an example of that, well, actually, let me go on. So there's an established principle of municipal law, government law, that the council may not take an action that has the effect of binding future councils.
Or boards, right? We're talking about our
boards, yeah. So if the substance, to give you an example, so that if you have a city council, for example, just because this example is easier, a city council may amend the planning code, therefore so may the voters. The voters may not, however, nor may the council adopt a measure that says that the planning code shall never be amended. The effect of that is to bind future, it's not to take an affirmative legislative act, it's really to bind future members of the board from taking an action that they otherwise may take lawfully under their powers. In my view, in this case, court is more likely than not to conclude that this 2009 ballot measure violates that principle. Right now, under state law, the board has very broad discretion to determine whether it wants to contract out for police services or to provide those services through employees. The effect of this measure would be to deprive the board of that power that it has under state law. It essentially says, notwithstanding the fact that state law says you can contract out and that's within your discretion, we're going to adopt an initiative ordinance that says you cannot do that unless the voters approve it. There are a number of cases dealing with very similar situations where the courts have concluded that that type of measure that seeks to bind the actions of future boards or to vest them of the legislative power that they otherwise have violates this principle and is therefore invalid. There are certain limits on this principle. For example, the board can enter into a 3-year contract, and that the effect of that may be to some extent to limit the power of a future board to amend that contract, but we're not really dealing with that situation here. What we're looking at here is an initiative measure that by its terms forever into perpetuity would prevent this board and every future board from exercising the power that it otherwise has under state law to contract out for police services should that be the decision. And therefore, again, in my view, it's likely that a court would conclude that this measure violates, is invalid for violating this settled rule of government law, and that essentially is a shorter version of what will be available, I guess, on the website or otherwise in the written opinion that I provided to the board earlier tonight and last week.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I guess we can take public comment on this now. Go ahead.
I have one question, Ryan. So please step to the mic for me.
Hi, Ryan Anderson. I do have one follow-up question. In 2009, if the board had not acted to, as an intermediate, I guess, break on the referendum, and that referendum had passed by a vote, that would have been a perpetual state. Is that correct? There wouldn't have been that wouldn't have terminated from board to board. That would have carried on in perpetuity.
Are you asking if the thing had gone to the voters to be voted on?
That's right. If it had gone through, that would have been a perpetual state.
It wouldn't have made it any more valid.
It wouldn't have.
No, it's the same. It's the same measure, whether it's ultimately adopted by the council because they make the choice they have it in the elections code to follow that process, or submit it to the voters and it's approved by the voters. It's the same problem, which is it seeks to deprive, or it would have the effect of depriving the board in perpetuity of a power that it has under the government code to contract out.
I understand. Thanks.
Thanks for the question.
So, Mr. President, I have a request from Director Gillette to read another statement.
Okay, please do.
So I would like to take this opportunity to make my position clear on the issues around the legality of the ordinance. The purpose of this provision in the ordinance was, to require the public vote before police services can be contracted out, is to ensure the board or the broad community support for such a decision. That seems a prudent thing to do since Kinston has had its own police force for decades. And I will tell you that during my research, our first officer was on the beat in Kensington since 1939 as the first police officer. But I also have one since from 1935. I can prove it from 1939, but I believe I have other evidence it's not as reliable. Sorry for that. Right? Thus, a change of this magnitude in the way we provide police services seems like a decision that should be made by the community, not by the board alone. For this reason, the underlying premise of the ordinance seems sound to me and consistent with the the core values of the community. Therefore, even if the ordinance is ultimately determined to be unenforceable, I, for one, would not feel comfortable making a decision to outsource police services without some mechanism to ensure that it is what the majority of the residents want. As to whether this impacts the work of the Citizens Committee, I think the answer is no. The committee is a fact-finding body. It has no decision-making power. In fact, members of the committee are not being asked to make any recommendations. They are simply to provide factual findings so that the board members can evaluate the options. If the board were able to determine the best structure for the district is to contract out our police services to another agency, I would most likely ask for the community-wide advisory vote or before agreeing to do so. And again, that was from Pat Gillette, who is out of town.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I guess I want to speak to that. She's unfortunately not here. I understand as the author of the ordinance that Pat Gillette would be upset at the the nature that it seems to be an invalid document. However, while I appreciate her considerations of what would happen down the road, I find that a little premature at this state to stake a position on what will happen with the findings of any committee, and I think we should stick to the matters at hand.
I'm actually quite uncomfortable with this unilateral statement in absentia. I find
Well,
that
she has a right to have something read.
she certainly does, but it also
But
doesn't present us with an opportunity to expand on
Well,
her
I kind of
statement.
like Rochelle's approach. I think, I'm sorry.
I was reading Pat Gillette's document. Board member.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that yet, Frank. What happened was that Pat couldn't make it, and she asked to have a statement read. Yeah, correct.
Yes, her opinion.
So, I wanted to say that I think I agree with Rochelle that, this is all premature. We got an opinion. Nobody has recommended, nobody has given us any information one way or the other that it makes sense to contract out or not. And so the only staff direction I would want to provide at this point is to get the thing published on the website so people can read it. And, I don't think we need to take any other action than that on it.
Get the opinion published on the website.
That Mr. Riddle was explaining that he wrote, that we just voted to make the opinion that Mr. Riddle wrote public, and I'm saying that we should direct staff to get it published on the website so everybody can read it.
And I see obviously the consensus that brings. I just want to clarify one piece. Am I waiting for the general evaluation before I post it, written by Mr. Riddle? Or do you want me to post it as it is and then...
What general evaluation?
He was going to provide a general overview of the consensus of the opinion.
He just did.
Well,
I know he did, but
I think
in writing, do you
the
want me
question
to...
is, currently the memorandum is confidential. Are you just going to remove the word confidential and publish it as is?
That'd be fine. You can white it out, or you can leave it there, I guess.
No, I'd say white it out. It's not confidential anymore. That's the vote we just took. So
Yeah.
let's not confuse people by having that on it, okay? Please?
Yeah, but I'm not going to rewrite it, I guess is the point.
No,
it's-
we're going
it's
to publish
written,
it
it'll
as
be
written.
published.
We don't want the fee.
I would like to make a motion that we publish the confidential memorandum minus the words confidential memorandum at the top, exactly as presented to the board on the district website.
Thank you for that motion. I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. All right, shall we move on to item C, 6C, which...
Yeah, and
subject
I'm
a
going
bit.
to kind of shortcut the process here. Vanessa and I had a long discourse about this, and Randy and I had a discourse. And item C arose because, unfortunately, Rochelle's picked for this ad hoc committee, had to back out because her employer wouldn't let her do it. So there's two parts to this. One, I think Rochelle has the right to appoint someone to fill her choice because that person did not even get seated. So I'm fully in favor of her picking her person. She has the right to have her voice and her choice heard. The second part is a longer issue I'd like to push off to later, and that's what do we do about filling vacancies? It's not relevant to tonight's decision. So I think in the interest of time, since it is getting really late, I'd like to push off that part of it and just kind of go with what Vanessa says here, and I'm sorry to consolidate this, but just let Rochelle explain. I think the board needs to say, yeah, it's great for Rochelle to fill her seat because that's going to be a logical outcome. And then two, let's just, at some point down the road, we need to pick up what to do about how we fill vacancies on our committees. There's no guidance from anybody, that's all. But that's a discussion for another night, not tonight.
All right, well, could I suggest then that we skip to item D and...
Can we go ahead and continue item C? We have to
Yeah.
move to continue.
Yeah, okay.
all right,
so-
okay.
You want to move to continue?
Yeah, I'll
So
move
that's
to
a
continue
motion?
item C.
And I'll second you.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So we go to D, and I'm sorry, did you want to make a comment?
I did.
Item C and D are what we're talking about.
Well, we're moving to item D now. We've decided to table
Item
item
C we
C for
tabled.
maybe some other meeting.
And Kat,
And I wanted to make a comment about item B.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
About B. Okay.
Go ahead.
Close. I mean, there is a lot to think about. I thought I was. No?
You got a little closer.
Is this close enough?
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, I understand that the board can always call for an electoral advisory vote about contracting out, and I would like to encourage the board to actually do that and have it come up. Contra Costa County is having 2 elections next year in June and November, to actually put it on the June ballot and see if people are willing to do that, to actually move ahead, which would fulfill actually the ordinance, but it would be good to know what people want. And the other thing is that I understand that the city of El Cerrito already has a bid for contracting out available, and I ask the board to find out what it is. Maybe it's a sort of a general bid, but it would be good to actually start getting some ballpark figures to see, see what the story is. Thank you.
isn't that what our ad hoc committee is doing?
Well, but the board, I mean, if the board could just do it as data. I mean, as far as I know, it's only the board that can ask for bids. The ad hoc committee can't ask for bids. So it would be nice if the board asked for some ballpark bids. I mean, you know what the staffing levels are now, and you can compare apples to apples. And thus, you have some figures to work with.
That's really within the purview of this ad hoc committee, so we aren't going to step on their toes. They're empowered to do just that. They're empowered to look into the economics of contracting out. So rather than have us do it, that's part of their fact-finding, and that's what we want them to do.
So you're saying they are empowered to ask for bids on behalf of...
No, they're empowered to look at the economics of contracting out.
Well, you can only really look at the economics if you get bids.
I disagree with you on that. We actually...
It would be nice to get some real figures, and El Cerrito apparently has some real figures for the ad hoc committee to look at.
Okay, your opinion is noted. Thank you very much. We'll certainly consider it. All right, so moving on to D, the issue is I think we're moving on to D. The issue is, do we want to make a motion to empower Director Sheriff Watt to appoint an alternate member to the Ad hoc Governance Committee to replace Lori Trevino? Correct?
I don't think that's what it says, Mr. President. I don't think it says empower her. I think it says for her to appoint an alternate.
Well, we have to approve it, right? We have to take a vote,
Well,
don't we?
afterwards, I believe, to reaffirm.
Take a vote afterwards?
Yeah. She moves and nominates her appointment, and then we vote on it.
Okay.
I apologize. It's my understanding Director Sheriff Watt makes a motion that includes the appointment of the alternate, and this body votes on it at that time.
Well,
We
okay,
vote to
fine.
accept her.
We didn't vote on our selections before. We simply made our selections and they were it, but,
We did vote, actually. We did.
Well, it's
okay,
really
I don't
simple,
care.
guys.
We don't need to argue. So what's
I'm
your
happy to
selection?
jump in.
Why don't
I'm
you
happy to
jump in
jump
and
in.
say who you want to select?
Okay, so first I want to thank Lori Trevino. That it's unfortunate that she was unable to serve, but she has offered to be an enthusiastic resource for the community. In making my selection, I thank the board. I would have offered them, of course, the same courtesy should one of their appointments be unable to serve at any point. I do believe, I don't want to get too into C, but I believe it would be responsible to allow whomever has essentially lost a participant to replace that participant. I also believe that it's important to choose at this time until we, from the original list of applicants. So therefore, I would like to appoint Simon Braffman to the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
You are welcome. Yes,
All right.
he is.
Simon, stand up and show yourself.
Mr. Braffman is a member of the Finance Committee and a member of KCC, and has enthusiastically agreed should he be nominated to and appointed to serve.
So you're moving to appoint him, correct?
I move that Simon Braffman be appointed to the Ad hoc Governance Committee to replace Ms. Lori Trevino.
And I'm seconding the motion. Any discussion? All
Welcome
in favor?
aboard. Watch out what you wish for.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Simon, welcome aboard. Okay. Now we move to item E. And is this something, Chief General Manager Hart, do you want to brief the board on, or
Yes.
you, Rochelle? Sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is item 6E, and in the last several months, I've had a couple conversations with individual community members, as well as several emails that we have taken with regard to how we take our minutes for each meeting. Minutes typically, as required by the Brown Act, are something that is done at each Brown Act committee meeting. And of course, this Board of Directors meeting is no different from that. In order to make sure that we provide adequate summary of minutes based on what is said, what we have found is some difficulty of getting everything that has been articulated to the degree that in some cases we've been asked to make those changes because they didn't say that, or they didn't mean that, or it was said to be something different. So as we looked at what are some alternatives, we went out to all the districts and special districts in California, and we got a variety of different opinions, a variety of different circumstances that came back as to how each one of the special districts did. Part of our research also was what is specifically required for our board policy. And there's two different issues. There's one's for amendments. So when you make an amendment to a particular document, like say the minutes from last meeting, and you want to change that, say you change it from something very minor, but you want to clarify a date, say the date was wrong. So we physically write the date that's changed based on the direction from the board. You approve then the minutes as amended. The difficulty is that in some cases, and it was brought up tonight, is what happens with those amended minutes. A lot of times, they never make it back to the website. They actually stay in our file as amended minutes directed by the board. So if someone were to say, I didn't say X, I said Y, no one in reality would really know that those amendments were amended. So we have added an item to the website to put on there approved amended minutes. It won't be every time, but that's something that I've been trying to figure out how the best way to do it, because what happens is the minutes are already posted, they're already in the board packet, and we've been trained very carefully to make sure we don't change those minutes unless it's a motion by the board, because you approved those minutes. So we came up with an idea that we would, if those minutes were changed, we would physically either write or type on the minutes itself, and I know we had some difficulty in scanning in the past, but we'll write it on there and we'll put it into a different section that says amended minutes. And that's so the community can find any minutes that are amended. So that's one issue, and that's for amended minutes.
Okay, can I just say something here now? That is going to be largely made somewhat moot by the change that you're proposing.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. But I wanted to bring that up because I, quite frankly, Dr. Schwartzberg and I have had a couple of conversations, and quite frankly, I promised him that I would bring that up, and I know that he'll probably want to speak, but I think I was committed to at least have that discussion to make sure that he knew that I'm compelled to want to fix the problem and recognize that it's a problem not just with us, it's all over. We got a lot of different feedback, and I can let Lynn talk about all the difference of opinions that we got and what different actions several different boards take when it comes to amended minutes. So let me just comment on that, and I'll have Lynn respond to that piece, just so that you're familiar with that before I move on.
Okay, so with respect to amended minutes, the district has been amending minutes in accordance with accepted practice for eons of time. And I continued the practice that had been established by all of my predecessors. The advent of websites is quite new for special districts. As such, special districts, or CSDA in particular, has not adopted, nor do they recommend any particular prototype with respect to minutes and how they're posted, other than most, or at least those that do have websites, post their agendas and board packets on them. They have no recommendations for amended minutes on the website. So we're sort of venturing into virgin territory here.
It's really not. I guess that's why I'm a little confused, because you look at KMAC, they have a very consistent method, like other municipal advisory councils, of producing action minutes that would state John Doe opposed item 2, stated that he wished XYZ, end of it. So I guess before we move along, can I ask if this has been brought to the standing committee of the procedure and policies folks? Because that is an actual standing meeting, and I thought that...
That's why, Director, that's why I brought in Director Sharice Watts into the fold to kind of ask, because she, I believe, is tasked with that committee. And I wanted to kind of get her input as well, and she's obviously been... But
this hasn't been to this has not been presented to the committee? There is an appointed committee.
There is not an appointed committee. There is an appointed coordinator or chair, but there is not a committee.
But as indicated, that this may change, the amended minutes issue may change to some degree based on other recommendations that I'll have in a minute.
So I guess my question is, if prior to our being seated, the procedures manual had some edits and a body that met to review any amended changes that they brought to the board. So I guess I'm curious
You know, Vanessa, there was, they spent so much, that's all part of the manual, right, that we follow, the policy
Right,
procedure
and
manual.
this seems to
And they-
reference a manual change. That's why I'm asking.
Well, yeah, the only thing is, you know, they spent over 2 years.
I'm not opposing it. I'm just asking if there's no committee, you've made no appointments to a committee, there's no standing committee, there's just a coordinator.
That doesn't stop the board from taking action on a
That's not
proposal.
my point. My point is that you don't have any intention of having an ad hoc committee for any future changes, that we all sort of agree that we're just going to do it by board direction or board consensus.
Not necessarily, but for now, I think, for this particular issue, I think the board can decide upon it, and I think why don't we hear the proposal?
That was my question.
There appears to be a loophole with regard to changes in the minutes. And one of the concerns we had, I think, was that previously, following tradition and writing in the changes was fine, but with the advent of websites, and truthfully, our website will be required to be ADA compliant, and I believe that writing in changes that can be cited as unreadable will force us. That's why I have proposed on page 43 a change in content. We have, if you look on page 45, there are changes. There is a category for changing content, but that is just in terms of procedure, not in terms of actual physical change to the documentation. And I think we needed to have a change there to specifically deal with some difficulties we've had in previous minutes. The next portion of our discussion actually discusses changes in future to bring us in compliance with, or, to bring us into a different kind of category. But this is actually looking backwards with some issues we have on the table, and it's just sort of to clarify some previous problems.
So if the change that General Manager Hart is going to propose goes through, there will be a difference if we approve it. I guess starting next time around, next meeting.
I think we have to.
But historically, we still
about one more meeting.
Yes, one more meeting. Historically, though, we still have to account for the way we have been doing it, and the record of changes made when the board says we need to amend the minutes. So we're talking about sort of, if we go forward with this new proposal, wrapping up the presentation on the website about how things have been conducted up to the point of this change. And then if this change actually, if it goes through, will simplify things greatly and will also serve to reduce misunderstandings, I think, astronomically. So why don't you go ahead?
So a couple of things real quick. It is 9:43, so...
Yes, we have to decide whether we want to go beyond 10 o'clock. Do I have a motion from somebody that we go as long as we need to go to finish our business?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
That was your motion.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Nobody opposed?
So it is truly the intent to be transparent, all right, and informative. So when the board makes a motion and approves an addendum to the minutes or an amendment, or a member of the community says, I didn't say A, I said B, and the board agrees and it directs me to change the minutes, how does that get done? So how does someone know that those minutes, and that's what we're trying to fix on the minute piece of it. So on the actual minutes themselves, as Lynn had noted, and as everyone has seen for the past several years, I think, based on the circumstances, is what we would describe as summary minutes. And for a variety of different reasons, and they could be personally, and I'm talking specifically this district, they could be that she writes with her offhand, which is what she's doing right now, which I don't know how someone does that. All right, I can't even throw a ball with my opposite hand, I think, straight. But I think it's a tough job to be the minute person. All right, and recognizing that, coupled with the fact that We won't always get every single word unless someone gives us a written document, which we then post within correspondence. Another way to do it, and it is specifically board policy currently, is to have action minutes. And those action minutes would...
You mean it's in the
Proposed.
policy manual?
It's in the policy manual.
We haven't been following it, but it's in the
Correct.
policy manual.
All right. Well, it's actually a board direction was to provide it into the actual, to follow it. We found that it is actually not listed, even though we found the motion, the policies have never been changed and updated. But they will, obviously, as we get down to it, and I'm not sure when that's on my calendar, but it is on my calendar. So in other words, we have a board action that said you should have action minutes, all right? But we found that the board policy was never specifically altered or corrected to that degree. So what I'm asking is that the board agree and reaffirm its direction by having action minutes, and then we put it into the actual board
Okay, and
policy.
can you explain what you mean by action minutes?
Action minutes would be that Kevin Hart and Randy Riddle, all right, spoke during public comments. And not have a summary of their specific statement. What I'm proposing is that we have audio as well as video being recorded now, and I'm proposing that for redundancy, we have one more audio recording to make sure that we capture it, because I know in the past, I've been told, there's been some, Murphy has been in the room, and it hasn't always been recorded properly, or audio has not always been as thorough as it should be. We may defer, all right, the board may defer this until we get the audio thing set up, the new system. I certainly would encourage that to happen. We've even looked into having, because I know that people tend to stand up and want to talk, even having some mics in the audience area. But I'm also told that there's a ultimate frisbee contest that's done in this room as well, and the mics I'm sure would probably be a target. So we're trying to be very careful about that, but I want to try to find ways to make it work. And there's also, as mentioned, ADA compliance issues to try to increase the volume.
Okay, so...
Trying to put it all together, essentially.
So can I, just to clarify what we mean by action minutes, so what we would do is instead of having Lynn try to capture in summary form a narrative of discussions that take place in advance of votes or whatever, public comment, whatever, the minutes would only record actual votes that the board takes, and what else would they record?
Well, on page 44, I proposed, there it said the first full paragraph. But the date, of course, well, I put October 9th. That would have to be changed to at least November 13th. But I can read. Official minutes.
So we defined it, please.
Yeah. Official minutes will be written in the form of action minutes as of November 13th, 2015. Action minutes are defined as including time, place, and attendees, a statement of issues considered by the board, and related responses or decisions for the issues. Vote shall be included with names of ayes, nays, and abstentions.
Okay, so then...
Can I ask a question?
So then it's really basically it's the actions the board takes for the most part.
Correct, and that is the only thing that is absolutely required.
Yeah,
let me
I think
finish. And if people then want to go back and revisit, well, what was said, what did Dr. Schwartzberg say during that discussion, they can go to the video. If there's some glitch in the video, they can go to the audio, that's the backup, and they can revisit exactly what was said.
Yes,
so
sir.
we're not making any interpretation of what was said.
Correct.
People go to the actual recording.
Yeah, so can I speak, please, to this? Yeah.
So,
If you want to comment, would you please come up to the podium?
What?
Can I make a, I've been waiting, may I?
I'm sorry. Sure.
That's okay. So, I don't support this as proposed, for several reasons. One, it would have been nice to have an example of how minutes would be reflected in public comment, as well as what action minutes look like for a vote, for instance. Having actually advocated for residents whose comments were either not recorded or not captured properly or fairly. I don't think we are even near ready to start abbreviating comments that just minutes that reflect Marilyn Stolen made public comment, end of discussion. It's so, I just have a really profound concern that none of this will be captured and that we are not even ready. I just don't have confidence in the recording system as it stands and how we're capturing minutes, and I think that it's such an extreme abbreviation of public participation in that record that I'm actually a little shocked. So I know this comes back for a second reading. I don't know if you can add an example, but I encourage you to look at KMAC minutes, and I also encourage you, Mr. President, to please consider speaker cards, because speaker cards have name of speaker, agenda item, oppose, or support. And it's very clear, no one has to interpret if you support or oppose something if you've checked the box yourself. And to me, capturing a few, Ms. Stolen expressed concerns about X, Y, Z, and then at least some, memorialize that the woman was actually here making a statement instead of just saying she's student public comment. I can't get my head around this at all.
So I know we have a speaker up there, but I do want to respond to that at the given time. Whenever.
You want to respond now, or
Okay,
you want to wait for her to speak?
I can do that. I don't want to.
Well, why don't we let? Did you want to follow on what Vanessa was saying, or?
I can let General.
So I think that if a speaker, first off, it's already been mentioned, all right, it's interpretation of the statement, number one. Number two, it's human dynamics. Number three, if the majority of the speakers came up, and this is just my recommendation, obviously, and spoke for 30 seconds, it's probably a quick and easy descriptive of what's been said. But the tendency that what I've seen is people tend to talk for lengths of time that it gets difficult. In
They
fact,
have 5 minutes under the manual.
And well,
And
ideally it's 5
sometimes
minutes.
they take longer.
But very few people talk less than 5 minutes, is what I've
Well,
seen.
that's a meeting management issue.
Well, I'm just suggesting another way of doing it so that we can accurately reflect, all right, and meet the law for purposes of providing minutes. Because the flip side is that sometimes the inevitable is we're not going to write every single thing the way that someone believes that they should have said, and it's misinterpreted.
And I agree with you, but I'm asking for a
And I
middle
want to try to
ground.
make sure that the board is accurate in what it's doing. So we write up there that Ms. Stolen talked about X, Y, Z, but we don't go a summary of everything that she said. And the tendency is, all right, to do that, and the board direction to the general manager back then was to provide action minutes. So I'm just trying to ask the board to reconsider, reaffirm that, because what we've done over the last couple of years is gravitate to a summary more so than a action.
You're asking the board to do what we said we were going to do and never actually did, is what you're doing.
Okay.
Please let her comment.
Marilyn Stolen. Let me just say, in 2009, when the action minutes were supposedly adopted, that was probably one of the worst years that went on in Kensington. I've just reviewed the minutes from that year, and that was the year when the directors looked at Mr. Harmon's credit card records, and the minutes records all of the questions that he was asked, the expenses, the result, the actions of the board to have an audit, some discussion of that. Now, if they had followed action minutes, it would have just said, so-and-so spoke, and that was the end of it, and we wouldn't have the details. If we didn't have a dysfunctional district, then I would say, great, do what Berkeley does, do what Dublin does. But we have a dysfunctional district, and that's the reality, is we're moving towards health, we're moving towards having a democracy, transparency, but we're not there yet. And you cannot listen to these meetings and hear what people are saying. Half of what they say is clipped, half of it is indistinguishable, it's blanked, someone moves away from it. There were complaints for years about the audio system. So there isn't any good way to look at that now. Now, I went to Dublin's, and I listened to Mr. Hart crack his jokes, came across nice and clear. They have action minutes, but as soon as you click on the action minutes, what comes up immediately is the video. So whether I wanted to see him or not, there he was, along with the other directors, and it was terrific. And I thought, why can't we have that? What's so technically difficult about that? I would certainly approve of action minutes the way you're proposing if we had streaming so that the public could listen to this meeting as it occurs or listen at any other time and have an adequate functioning system that captured every single word. The county has it. You can listen to any of the county meetings.
Well, I think that you're proposing a formula that's doable. I think and I've talked a little bit with Chief Hart about this, and I think we've agreed that we can't have a system like he's proposing unless we do have a state-of-the-art sound system and redundancy so that we can, have assurance that everything will be recorded and
but we don't have it
intelligible.
now,
Well,
and it's
yeah,
not in
okay.
place now.
We can get it.
But Mr. Hart said that he's researching that. So until I would hear that it's installed, that it's working, that it's operational, I would not have...
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
I would want it to be tested because we're in transition right now. And if you listen to any other community's meetings, they're not discussing the kind of issues that we have right now. And maybe we'll be there in another few months, another year, I don't know. But I think what people have to say here is very important, and I think it could be summarized better. There's a lot of, and I have gone through the minutes from 2009 to 2015. I have read every one of those, and I have summarized it. And there's a lot of flack in there, and it could easily be trimmed down. So I think the minute taking could be summarized more effectively, but not classic action minutes. Okay.
All right, well, I guess we could call this the first reading. Any other comments? Go ahead, Dr. Schwartzberg.
I want to second what Marilyn said, and I think the proposal is a good one. But obviously, this whole discussion is as a result of and a product of the inadequacy in the minutes that have occurred. And it seems to me that one of the issues has been what seems to me to have been blatant bias in the preparation of some of the minutes. And we need to call a spade here. That's what happened. I want to know whether the minutes of February 12th of this year, as they appear in the packet for the meeting of March 12th, are going to in some way indicate in the minutes that are on the website, if they are going to indicate that the statement that is attributed to me is a misrepresentation of the meaning of my total statement. I want to know how someone who reads those minutes is going to know that they have been amended. I want to know that. And I want those minutes amended on the website in a manner that allows someone who reads them to know that they have been amended and where to go to find what the amendment is. Because as far as I know, they continue to be just as they were before, uncorrected in any way that is meaningful.
Can I make a question here or a point here? I don't know what other cities are doing. I actually brought up the point of action minutes in 2009. Of course, that was back when I was a baby at this point. But technology's changed so dramatically here. When someone said you could go to an action minute and hit to a website and look at the film, I was astounded. But the point is, no one's trying to misrepresent anybody's statements, Len. They really aren't. I mean, and put aside your biases here now. No one is. We're trying to do our best by our community, and I think we're all trying our best to really put out something that people can look at. What I'd like to know is, what does the city of Berkeley do? How do they correct their minutes? And boy, if you think we're dysfunctional, have you been to a Berkeley City Council meeting lately? God, you have to have an armed guard to get you in and out. Now, my point is this: what do they do to correct their minutes? They must have experience with this, and maybe they have more technological capacity than we do, but there's something they're doing that would help us get this done. I don't know how you could go back in time except to star a minute or put some kind of, link to a point in an old minute that would accelerate you to a correction someplace. Maybe you can do that. I'm just not technologically proficient enough to know how you can, trace through mistakes to a current version you can look at.
Well,
but someone has that technology.
Not to jump in, but that was the proposal there under the registering changes in content there on the bottom of page 43. And Dr. Schwartzberg, did you read the proposal that I did there? I can read that portion. I proposed registering changes in content. When draft minutes are not adopted as submitted, changes will be noted in the online edition of the board packet with an asterisk symbol next to the text to be changed. Changed content will appear in the approved minutes. So we're not touching the original board packet because we have to leave that as it is. I'm proposing only an asterisk. Changes will be typed. Minutes, once approved and signed by the board president, those are our final, will appear electronically under a separate heading from the board agenda packet. The heading will be titled, we can quibble about this, whatever, approved minutes, final minutes, whatever, followed by the date of the meeting which they record. So you would see approved minutes, October 2015. Changes to the record may be requested up to 1 year after the initial meeting date. End quote. That was what I proposed to rectify past problems.
You go to the county, Planning Commission is a perfect example. You go to their website to look at the archives. You click on agenda to see the agenda. You click on the minutes to see the latest minutes. Sometimes you click in their draft minutes. Sometimes you click in their approved minutes. This whole idea that we keep combining a packet and we're wedded to this idea of a packet, even the city of Berkeley separates constituent correspondence from their packet and leaves it separate so people don't have to download 200 pages when they want to participate in a meeting. So I know this is a first reading, and I really hope that we
for a couple things. Number one, it doesn't necessarily constitute a first reading unless you guys adopt it as presented, and then there'd be a second reading of what you adopted. Secondly, I know we're compared against other cities. I think don't quote me, it's either $1,000 or $1,500 that we have on an annual basis to assist with the maintenance of the website. And I know that the website was just redone, all right? But those other cities have IT personnel. They have someone on staff every day, all right? And the resources are limited, as everyone knows in this community. So I'm trying to work within the budget that I have and redo the budget to try to redo the website to make it better and more user-friendly within the constraints that I have of the budget. So this is just as an alternative to try to make it better. And Berkeley, as an example, has action minutes.
All right,
and I would propose that we, should the technology move, that we change the policy and procedure, but that proposed amendment was simply to rectify problems and prevent as they stand now. So I would like to.
Mr. Riddle, I'm wondering, and I hate to refer to KMAC, but I was on there for 7 years, and we had lots of these issues where we'd actually just rescind the minutes, make the amendment, and put them back up. So what legislative act, what kind of action do I take on the dais if I want to say, those minutes, why can't we pull them back, amend them, and then have the board re-adjudicate the item?
Well, I think under the proposal, that's going to work better. I mean, again, the problem is right now, the minutes, as far as I know, only show up as part of the packet that goes to the council. And so the concern has always been, as I understand it, no matter what action you take, I mean, you don't want to take an action that says, go back and change the packet that was sent out as part of that meeting. And that's, I think, where the real concern is.
Chief Hart, how difficult would it be to separate the original minutes that are now part of the packet so that one can go to the website, see the original minutes with the asterisk that Rochelle is proposing, and then go to the to the adopted amended minutes and see what was changed there, that the asterisk tells you there was a change to.
We believe we can accomplish that with, pretty good ease.
Okay, so what I would like to suggest is that we've had some discussion. I think the point Ms. Stolen made was good, that if we're going to adopt an action minute system that absolutely depends on technology that works, that we need to have the proposal be complete in that sense. If we're going to switch to action minutes, we've got the technology, we've tested the technology, perhaps we've emulated technology we know has been proven to work in other jurisdictions. Somehow we get reasonable assurance that we actually have a system that works, so that it comes as a package of both procedural change and minute taking plus technology that makes that a dependable way to capture everything that happened at the meeting. And maybe what we could do is get a progress report on that at the next meeting and take it up again.
I would like to continue this item. I think...
yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay, great. Are you moving?
Yeah, I guess I am.
Okay, I'll second that.
The motion is to continue this discussion to the next meeting and see what progress is developed in the interim.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd like to see is maybe you could bring in an example of
Yeah.
what you're talking about doing. I can't visualize it. I'm not that spatially
My only consideration is, do we want to separate these issues? I'm perfectly happy to separate the idea of action minutes, because I do agree that we must have technology that matches. But in the meantime, do we want to fix a problem that we have and amend Dr. Schwartzberg's problem with adding 560.2.33?
Well, okay, the only problem I have with that is how far back do we go?
That's right.
I don't want to be going back into,
It says changes to the record may be requested up to one date after the initial meeting.
No, I mean, if let's say that next meeting or the meeting after that, we decide we're going to switch over to the action minute situation. We still have the historical record we have to take care of. We have Dr. Schwartzberg's issue that someone reading the proposed minutes would not understand that there was a big change that you could find in the amended minutes. If you knew there was a big change, your solution to that is the asterisk placed on the original proposed
Yes.
minutes. And so...
And the going to the, or just simply going to the approved minute category that lists separate of the board packet, just minutes.
So the only concern I have is I'm assuming, that we are, in not the too distant future, we are going to be able to switch to an action minute scenario. We are going to have the technology we need to make that work. Then the question is, for what we have on record preceding that, how far back are we going to go with this asterisk
You don't go
thing?
back. You start now and move forward. Well, you start with
It says
Lynn's
changes to the
complaint.
record may be, we could make it 6 months, but after the initial meeting date, that means that as of, we're only going back, maybe we only go back to January to any requests for changes beyond that. We have to allow people to be able to, if they miss a meeting, if they're out of town, to then come forward and say, you did misrepresent me in September of 2015. I think we have to allow a few months for that.
Yeah, I just think there should be limits.
There's a motion to continue
There's a
this.
motion to continue, and I seconded that.
All right, there's a motion to continue. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Motion passes. Did you say yes?
Are you still taking comments?
Oh.
We're continuing the matter.
We're
But Leonard,
continuing
go
to...
ahead.
Go ahead and comment.
Yeah, there were two of us in line to comment.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just very quickly, I like the idea of the action minutes. I was one of the people, as you know, who had corrections and was trying to get things corrected and kept coming back and trying to get things corrected, and got very frustrated with that. Plus, it's really boring for everybody else and takes up time. So I super like the idea of action minutes. My personal solution was I'm just not going to read the minutes, and therefore I can't ask for any corrections. Seriously, that's what I decided. That's what I'm doing. But I think this is great with everything, you and other speakers have contributed. I just wanted to add the suggestion of having 2 video cameras, like at least one venue at the county does, at different angles, so if one fails, you have the other. And that citizens' letters and statements still be appended to the minutes as they are now, or I guess they're appended to the board package, but that would continue to happen, right?
Yes, any correspondence that we get, we send it, it's in the following month from when we get them.
Yeah, and great, and the corrected minutes and speaker cards sound really wonderful too.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for ignoring you standing up there. I didn't realize, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that you wanted to comment.
If we
Sorry.
had a speaker card, we would know.
Just briefly, it seems to me that the problem with the inadequacy or inaccuracies in the minutes has been exacerbated recently when Lynn had her accident. And I understand that it is very difficult to be writing with the wrong hand. But it would help matters, I think, if you took the minutes on a computer. You could type a whole lot faster than you can write. And at least I can, and I think most people can. And I think what I would certainly like to avoid is having minutes that require somebody to go back to the full video. It takes hours and hours to get through a video and find the exact point at which you want to hear somebody speak. So unless it is streaming, if that is the term that you use, so that you can hear somebody speak right away, I think that really is doing a disservice to all of us.
First, I'd like to ask Rochelle for a clarification.
Sure.
When you say to asterisk the correction, if you go to, for example, to the one sentence that was reported in the minutes, what I said, would there be an asterisk at that point? And
On the original one that was gotten wrong.
On the original one, which misrepresents the meaning of my statement, seriously misrepresents it. It turns it on its head. What would it be noted there if those minutes are going to continue to be up on the website, and that would be the first place that anybody would go to look at the minutes, and they'd see that? Would it be corrected right there? Would it say this particular representation has been amended, and where to go for that amendment?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that will lie only within the board packet. You would have to, and that actually there's a different category completely that people would go to. If you wanted to read the minutes, I would presume that you would go to the category of approved minutes, that would be the formal record. Anything else is simply as proposed.
What Dr. Schwartzberg is looking for, if I understand correctly, is when you go to the original minutes that were gotten wrong, quote unquote, your proposal was to mark that gotten wrong part with the asterisk.
Yes, because
so the person reading them would see, okay, that was changed, and then they can go to this other section that shows the change. That's what you're looking for,
and
isn't
I
it?
realize that it's onerous. You would like the text there, but my understanding was that legally, I cannot go back and change what was proposed. That I cannot do that. So that was my understanding, which is why I proposed only an asterisk,
But
not the full text.
why even have the only proposed minutes even up there? If they're not the final minutes, why not have the final
They're
approved
part of the public
minutes there?
record. We can't destroy the public record. They are part of the record. They were proposed.
Guys, we continued this.
Yeah, we did. Let's
The
move
one
on.
thing that Vanessa and I were discussing here is it would be nice to have some actual examples of what you propose here.
Well, let's try to do
Yeah,
that next time.
Yeah,
around.
I'd like to see an example of using my situation.
Every scenario that we're
Okay?
proposing.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
And
I'd
just bring in
appreciate
some
that.
examples and pass them
That's
out.
fine, this
and
was
walk-
simply
and I
meant
also-
to be a first go-round and discussion.
Okay, and I also want to say one other thing about the action minutes and, what's presented. I don't remember whether it was 2009, it may have been, when Kathy Cosell was bringing up the business about Chief Harmon's use of the district credit card, and Chuck instructed him at that time, said, "Don't do that anymore, that's wrong. Don't do that anymore," and that's in the minutes. And in fact, for him to have done it again after you had instructed him not to, that might have changed the DA's findings about things. And, in fact, the FBI agent who I consulted with and told me that that's exactly the case.
We
that
need to
after
move
that,
on. We need to move on.
So
Okay.
we get a vote,
Yeah,
call a vote?
okay.
Mr. President?
What's that?
We'll call a vote with Mr. Toombs' friendly amendment of providing examples.
Yes.
We've already voted.
I mean, I think
we
we kind
voted
of
to
agree.
continue it, but I think the point is well taken. Please bring us examples of what you want to do.
We need to vote on that. We made the request. He'll do it.
Yes.
I don't think we need to vote.
Did we
Let's-
vote? Okay.
Yeah, we already passed it. We voted to
It's
continue it.
getting late, folks. Let's move on, okay?
Excuse me. The person who takes the minutes would like to weigh in for just a moment. Within the policy manual, first of all, the policy manual directs me to do summary minutes, which is why I've done them in that format. So additionally, within the policy manual, there's a list of specific items I am required to include in the minutes. If the board would be so kind as to provide a similar list of bullets so that I am sure to include everything the board wishes to see, that would be tremendously helpful.
That's
Thank you.
Very good idea.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
I guess that should be part of the example.
Yeah,
that we-
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Lynn.
We'll bring that back.
All right. So let's move on to item F. The board will receive a presentation from the general manager. General manager, would you please brief the board?
So this one should be a fairly easy one, I think, that everyone should probably agree with.
Could you say that again?
Sorry, I'm hopeful, and that is that one of the things that we do not have in the community yet, from the community services district perspective, is a collaboration of between the police and the fire boards and/or district managers, and that is a one location that individuals could go to if, in fact, a disaster were to occur. So, based on my traveling back and forth with the tree pruning, I've noticed a lot of the land areas and potential spots that we could. I've had some informal discussions with Brenda, with the fire district, that we could put potentially a disaster trailer, which would contain anything from, first aid supplies to generators to water, whatever, on community property. In the meantime, I also found out that the fire board has allocated funds in order to pay for that, but their difficulty is finding a good location to do that, or to place a trailer, as well as they've had some discussions about local shelter bins as well. So I think that I'd like kind of permission, quite frankly, to have some open dialogue and discussion with the fire board representative, in this case Brenda, to place a emergency disaster trailer on community district property for purposes of bad things happen in the community. We need to utilize those resources.
So this is mainly a supplies container, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And my tentative thought was to have it, I'm told that there is some Boy Scout huts or Boy Scout tents up there, kind of up by, as you walk up the fire road, right to the left. There's some railroad ties that are there in that area, just before that area, so we don't have to do a lot of specific grading. I'm hopeful we don't have to do a lot of grading, but kind of put something right there. So utilizing the community center, hopefully it makes it through our structural engineering design, but it's close proximity to this building, which would kind of then become the nexus for response if we have a major incident that would occur in houses, and this would be the area to meet.
And
Works for me.
yeah, I think it's a great idea. Also, I just want to.
Oh, would you like to comment?
Yes. Okay. I'm just making the point that there is fiscal impact is zero or minimal.
Minimal. I would say minimal.
Who's paying to store the, who's paying to
Stock it?
stock it? Thank you.
The fire board would.
Are you going to landscape something around this, or are we going to be looking at it?
Let President Nagel speak, please.
Well, I just was asking. It's my
fair
chance.
question.
Well, he'll explain. He knows. He's been plotting and planning with
I
us.
thought we
So,
were in director's comments, so I'm sorry.
well, I'm just trying to, recognize authority here. So, would you like to speak, please?
Yeah, I'd like to add, I'm very happy to hear the suggestion that we have a site here. I'd like to just sort of brief everybody on how the town is organized for disasters. We're organized under a program called CERT, which stands for Community Emergency Response Team. We do not have one central assembly point. We have 6 different regions in Kensington. The region that we're in right now, I believe, is Peter Liddell's region. It's Region 5. We're in Peter. We're in your region, are we not? Okay, I'm not sure which region we're in, but anyway, the idea, and of course the fire department is the one that runs CERT. So it's run under the auspices of the El Cerrito Kensington Fire Department. So the idea was to have one of these sheds in each of the 6 Kensington areas. And the fire district was able to set aside $30,000, which is enough money to fund 5 of the sheds. We already have 1 shed in place on Cambridge and some other sheds around that. I'm not sure where they're located, but we're working on organizing that. So, and the reason that we're spread out is that in an earthquake, there isn't going to be a central assembly point. You're not going to be able to walk from or make it from Lake Drive down to Calusa Circle, for example. The roads will be out, there'll be down power lines. Everybody will be pretty much confined to their neighborhoods, so we're trying to regionalize these emergency. I'm talking an earthquake now. We have 2 major problems that we have to deal with: wildfires and earthquakes, and I'm talking earthquakes. Wildfires is quite a different thing. We just get the hell out of here as fast as we can if there's an earthquake, and that's Chief Hart's problem of figuring out how he's going to get us out of here as fast as we can. And he has CERT at his aid to help evacuate the area. But earthquake is quite different. We're not going to evacuate at an earthquake because there's not going to be any way out, most likely. That's the general plan. So the sheds that we're talking about, I noticed the comment was something like 25 feet. I'm not sure. The sheds are 5 foot by 6 foot by 5.5 foot. And they come with a generator. The water and food are not included in the sheds. That is the citizens' responsibility to store up their own emergency kit. We're just talking about a generator, cribbing, tools, rescue tools, extrication tools, fire extinguishers, communication tools, radios, that sort of thing. And we're basing this whole thing on a very successful program that Berkeley has instigated. They have something like 50 or 60 sheds around Berkeley. They're way ahead of us, and we're trying to catch up. But the sheds are, it's not. We're not looking to have one massive shed someplace in the middle of Kensington that every CERT team has to go to get a crowbar or flashlight or curbing material or whatever's needed in the case of building collapses, rescue, and fire suppression, the things that CERT has to worry about. But whichever area the community center is in, this is a wonderful assembly point. And the idea of having a shed here is an excellent idea. And I think we're probably close to several of, we're close to the intersection of several of the CERT areas, 5, 4, and 3, I think. Which would mean it would make sense to have maybe even a bigger shed here than we would normally have, that many people could use.
Which is why I didn't think it'd be a shed for the neighborhood. It would be maybe a little bit bigger, but I wanted to make sure the board didn't think I was thinking we're going to put an albatross out there, so I put less than 25 because I didn't know all the details yet.
Yeah,
Before we even talk about
so
it.
that's basically what we're trying to set up, and we are making some progress in locating sheds. I would imagine we'll by the end of the year we will have managed to spend the money we set aside to stock up sheds. And Chief, I'm glad that you're with us on this one. That's great. We'd love to have a shed here for sure.
Thank you for the report. I think it's a great idea.
I would say, oh, sorry.
But it'll be real quick. Did you know in the olden days that the cemetery, the mortuary, no, the mausoleum has advertised that they've had disaster supplies there? That's something to look into. Huh?
That's,
you know that. Okay. Well,
that was a clever bit of leadership there.
Not mortuary, the mausoleum. Either one.
I was going to say that given their proximity to the school and to the library, I would actually be fine with an albatross, because we could be looking at having quite large, depending on the timing of an earthquake, we could, and the building E as well as this building, we could be looking at quite a few community members located in this area should it strike a certain time of day. So
is this the kind of thing we should be looking for a specific proposal on next meeting, or do you want to vote now?
I just need direction to make sure that you know what I'm working on relative to a potential disaster trailer that could be utilized, if
We don't need to
something
really
happens.
take action.
We don't take action.
We just
No,
let
I
you,
just need
this
make
is
sure
just
it's more of an informative
status
Okay.
report.
vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please mush on. Sounds great.
yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. I see consensus. Thank you.
All right, that was easy. Now the next one may not be as easy. I don't know. Item 8.
Oh, no, it's going to be easy, I think.
Chief Hart, were you going to brief the board on this, or
On G,
yeah, or do you want me to?
I'll let you handle that one.
Oh, you will, huh?
Do you want me to? I'm happy to. I proposed it. So I'm
Oh,
happy to.
okay. Then go
Okay.
ahead.
So I had the privilege of attending the first ad hoc governance committee, and on October 1st, and congratulations to Mr. Spath, Dr. Spath, at being named the chairman, with Charles Reichman as the vice chair. They worked very hard and diligently late into the night. It was rather like a KPPCSD meeting, maybe even longer before they concluded, but they worked on. A concern that I saw, and in conversation with members of the committee, that arose during the meeting, was that they had some questions that they were hoping to find answers to, and needed perhaps to refer to an attorney. And in addition, they were wondering about how documents created, agendas, et cetera, would be distributed to the community at large. And I felt that there was a hole in the direction that we had given them, that the framework provided other answers, but we had not allowed for them to have any time with Randy. So my proposal is that we give them a limited set of hours so that we're not tying them up. They're trying to move forward and have a couple of extra session so that they're up to speed and advancing with their duties so that they can make the timeline as presented. And so I'm proposing that we maybe give them something like 3 or 4 hours where they can talk to Randy or to the public law group and have questions answered on procedure if needed, and then have to come back to the board for further time.
What's the fiscal impact on that?
Well, I think 3 hours at 3 to 5 hours would be somewhere between $900 and $1,500.
And that's being taken out of the consulting money we proposed, Lynn?
Well, that's a good question.
It could be. It just
Yeah,
depends.
I would like to see the numbers fleshed out on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I mean, the fee is what it is and the hours are what, I mean, I think the cost is, we can talk about that right now. What line item is another issue.
Well, actually, it's not, because some of us wanted to increase consulting, Kitty.
With the attorney, or?
Well, that's why I'm asking, is this, does this go toward that increase in consultant fees connected to the ad hoc committee, which I believe we all, or a majority of us, agreed to increase? And
Well, I think we all agree there's going to be a need for more consulting and non-legal consulting.
so you consider that non-legal consulting?
This is legal consulting, but
No.
I mean,
Didn't we ask them specifically to come to us with a request for assistance? I mean, that was
we
built
did.
into that.
It was.
So
but
this is
here's
their
my-
first request.
Yes. Well, it's my request because my concern is we don't meet again until November 12th. They have 2 meetings planned in that time. If they're trying to perhaps have a meeting every 2 weeks. If they're having to wait for our general board meeting and come and then say, well, we have this question, do you approve the time for it? And then we get back to them. We're going to be 3 meetings behind. And I'm not looking for a big number, but I think that they should have a little wiggle room to not.
Would you have Randy attend the meeting?
I think that would be up to them. I mean, if they want his time, if they want to use their 4 hours or whatever initially for Randy to, and to Randy as well, or what he's got available.
He's not looking terribly
promise
happy
you
there.
off.
So to Chuck's point, I attended the meeting also that evening, and I felt Randy was present and available, and I agree with you that we did consider this, and that my expectation was the ad hoc committee would come to the board, requesting specific help, and I didn't hear that from Mr. Spath tonight, so I know that's in the document.
Well,
Yeah,
Mr. Spath and I discussed it, and I said that this was a proposal that I was putting on the agenda because it was.
okay, could we hear from Dr. Spath
Yeah,
on this?
I prefer that.
I'm thinking I'm agreeing, I think it's a good idea for the committee to have access to Mr. Riddle. I would like to start with 3 hours, between now and the next regular meeting we have. I do have a question about whether...
Yes, that's right.
Well,
more, okay? Whatever. But I mean, I do have a question about who's going to, be the person to decide what questions get asked and that kind of thing, so...
Yeah, I think it's a process question. First of all, I don't think he needs to attend the meetings.
Good, okay.
To start out with. My sense would be that if an issue comes up, particularly if we're doing findings of fact, that may require some legal opinion, then we could come to the board, or if there's a board person that the board gives the authority to make that decision, shall we say, the president, for example, that we could come to the board and ask for, let's say, an hour of his time for a certain question, and then that be granted. Because I think whatever is going to come up that needs his opinion is going to be first discussed at the committee meeting, and then the request will be made. Now, I'm not sure that it will be of such an immediate need necessarily.
So between now and the next board meeting, do you have any sense of how much time you might need with Mr. Riddle?
No, I don't at all, because this, thank you, maybe. because this next meeting is when we're going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of how we're going to address each task. And then I think things will start fleshing out, if you will. So I don't see the need right now, but it may be down the road. So I think you need to set up a process that allows us to come to you to seek some time with him if the need be.
Well, I'm kind of thinking that we ought to get a report from your committee every board meeting, and when we get that report, then you could request so many more hours for the next interval, something like that.
Well, let me start out by saying that's what I plan to do, at least while I was chair. I am chair until through the meeting of January, and then a decision is going to be made as to whether we want to do revolving chairs or continue on with me.
If you don't have an immediate need, Mr. Spath, could you bring up the topic of what to propose to this board as your sort of allowance?
Well, I don't have a sense of what that allowance might be. I mean, talking with Rochelle, I think we envision that there may be a need for some type of a legal opinion, legal direction on something. But I can't say that it would be 3 hours of work, an hour and a half of work.
I was just going to ask you, we're going to get bogged down here in Rachel's point Rochelle's point about trying to get this thing moving in a timely fashion, and I'd just be in favor of giving you a budget of 4 hours of legal services a month, and if you don't use it this month, you bank it for next. But you're going to need to kind of move fast here, and if we have to wait for you to come back to us and back and forth, you're going to get tied up in your own shoelaces. And I'd just be in favor of giving you a monthly budget you have to live within.
I'd be willing to let them have 1 hour now, but I really, General Manager Hart, I want to see fiscal impact on every staff recommendation, because I'm not going to just give away, 4 hours at $350, $405, whatever the rate is.
$295.
I'm willing to do that when I have the chairman saying there's no immediate need. So I just want some kind of...
I'm not sure that's what he said.
He just said
do you
that.
anticipate?
Well, I'm just saying that after the first meeting, I don't envision that we were going to ask you tonight for legal services. Now, after the October 12th meeting, we may say, okay, what we need is a little time. I can't tell you whether it's an hour. He can tell me whether it's an hour or 2 hours. And then we...
I can't imagine, maybe it's my lack of imagination, that anything that's going to come up between now and the next board meeting is going to take more than 2 hours from the committee.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it would. I'm just suggesting.
Would you be comfortable with a budget of 2 hours of legal time?
Yes, that's fine to start out with, because right now I don't think we are envisioning needing his services.
So, Mr. Spath, would you be comfortable if I gave you 2 hours, or we gave you 2 hours, but that on the next agenda, if it's not too late, that's an item to discuss the process of how you approach us?
Sure.
And sort of get an estimate of what, I just want to watch the legal fees.
No, that's fine.
I want to
I
give all the
appreciate
access
that.
you have, but I just want to watch this budget, and I just want accountability someplace.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I actually agree with wanting to watch the fees, but I also would like to give them 2 hours authority now at this meeting.
And that's what I said, but
Okay.
moving forward, I would like Mr. Spath to work with the ad hoc committee to come up with a process of presenting to the public, what they think they're going to need.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's kind of...
So let me propose this then. We're going to have 2 meetings before your next meeting. So by your next meeting, we will have the opportunity to discuss, how we will go about deciding whether we need legal services. And then we'll come to you in the November meeting and lay that out for you.
Or present what your balance is in hours. We only used 1 hour in the last cycle, or something that gives us an update of what your budget looks like.
If we use any.
If you use any, exactly.
Okay, so So,
Can I get one clarifying point? Can I make sure that the attorney's hours or validation that the attorney is needed go through the general manager, so that at least I can monitor that aspect? And I know that Dr. Spath is corresponding with Randy directly, and in cases I know that he's CC'd me, but I don't know all the time. So I want to make sure that, that I monitor that. In other words, if I can at least have that authority be given to me, so that I can make sure that we stay within the time period and that I manage the time, all right, for Randy.
makes sense.
That's
Makes
reasonable.
sense.
And that's only as a cost monitoring measure that you'd
Correct.
be copy, you would not be
Absolutely.
participating.
Correct.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then I move that we authorize Dr. Spath to engage Mr. Riddle for up to 2 hours between now and the next board meeting, with, I guess, Chief Hart serving as the conduit for the connection to Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, and to date, all correspondence that I've had directly with Mr. Riddle, I've CC'd General Manager Hart on. Now, Mr. Riddle did provide me with the same documents that he provided you with how to control unruly individuals that are...
Yeah. And excuse my redundancy, I don't need, Director Cordova mentioned this, I don't need to know dynamics of the discussion, other than, I want to monitor the amount of attorney fees and time, so that I can keep that in mind with the overall budget.
So maybe we could have an agreement also that Mr. Riddle would, report to you if he's had a conversation and what length of time he spent, something like
Sure.
that. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So the motion, is that clear, the one I made? Can I get a second on that?
I think you better restate it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, I move that we authorize Dr. Spath to engage Mr. Riddle's services for up to 2 hours until the next board meeting. The utilization of that time to be monitored by Chief Hart.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Okay, really quickly, the second part of that, I'm believing that agendas produced by the Ad Hoc Governance Committee, are we authorizing that those go to district staff and that they be put up on the district website?
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't know if if that was clarified and...
Shame.
District policy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any
great.
committee would have to have their agendas published.
Okay. And then...
Lynn's shaking her head.
Yeah, any documents related to this committee should be posted. My sense from the community is that this committee's work is so important that the community wants to monitor the developments.
My concern was they were talking about minutes and looking for a minute taker, and I wanted to make sure that we were monitoring that perhaps that administrative support was handled within the ad hoc committee's own budget and was not automatically regulated to district staff.
Right, and that's a great point. Thank you, Director, for bringing that up, because I did hear tonight that they're going to have their own website, and I know that he's back up at the podium, but I did want to mention, what kind of minutes are you taking, just out of curiosity?
Action item minutes.
Oh.
I thought you'd like that.
And you have an approval process, just to briefly approve what you've taken from the last minute?
The process will be actually similar to yours. We will produce draft action item minutes. They will be part of the agenda for the next meeting, and they will get approved at that next meeting. Okay. We have already created a website with General Manager Hart's assistance, and we already have the audio of the first meeting up there. And to my surprise, pleasant surprise, the audio is quite clear, because the recorder is about this big, and it sits right at the table, which I think you saw, Director Cordova, and as well as you did, Director Sheriff-Watt. So at least I'm pleased with that. And some of our members went back and listened to him, and actually confirmed what they thought or didn't think they heard. So, yeah, it's worked well. So, my intent is to pass everything through General Manager Hart, then to be posted up on the site, including the agendas, the action item minutes, any other accompanying documents, including the final revised framework that we talked about earlier this evening. So,
Thank you very much, and thank you for your hard work. All right, we have one final item here. It's being called old business. Board will receive a presentation from the general manager to consider rescinding the board adopted zero tolerance policy from UC Berkeley traffic safety evaluation, previously approved by board action on May 13th, 2010.
Mr. President, at this time, I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion and make a brief statement regarding that here. Pardon my reading it. I wanted to ensure it was accurate. As we all know, a director should not vote on a question in which he or she has a direct interest not common to other members of the board. This includes any situation in which a financial or personal interest may unduly affect a vote. Due to an unexpected but material personal consideration that may be subject to the Public Safety Officer Procedural Bill of Rights Act, and in accordance with conflict of interest principles, I will excuse myself from the meeting at this time so the remaining directors can freely deliberate this particular item. I will return following their vote.
You know, this issue is pretty darn important. It's also pretty darn late, and we have 3 board members here. I would propose that we table this for the next meeting. She may or may not want to recuse herself from the next meeting, I don't know, but at least we'll have another board member here. And this is a very, very important topic. I think it ought to be one of the first topics we take up at the next meeting. So I would propose we table this.
I'll second that. Oh, sorry.
At least we have 4 board members present. Yes. You second it?
Yeah, I do. It's really late, and I'm really tired, frankly. And this is a meaty subject, and I don't want to get bogged down in its details now.
It's not a short.
Yeah.
Any comments? Yeah. All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Tabling or carrying it forward? What are we doing here?
Next meeting.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, so motion to adjourn?
Yeah, right. Let me think about that.
I so move.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See you next time, folks.